A heavy snowstorm rolls in, and then you hear it. A distinct sound of thunder and see lightning sparkling in the sky. Congrats! You're one of the rare people who has witnessed Thundersnow. Until recently, scientists couldn't even agree that it's a real thing. But now, as they see more and more videos of it popping up online, they're trying to understand how it forms and how dangerous it really is. One thing is for sure, if you see lightning during a snowstorm, there's at least half a foot of snow falling somewhere nearby. We can even predict heavy snowfalls by thundersnow. But it doesn't work the other way around. Not every heavy snowfall causes thundersnow, and scientists are still wondering why. They think this beautiful natural event happens in a way that's kind of similar to summer storms. Turbulence in the air makes warm, moist air near the ground rise up into the sky. As it goes up, it cools down and forms clouds filled with tiny ice crystals, supercooled water, and soft hail called graupel. When these things crash around inside the cloud, they create an electrical charge, which leads to lightning and thunder. When it's cold enough for snow, the atmosphere doesn't have as much energy as it does in the summer. That's because the ground doesn't heat up as much in the winter. So there's less warmth and moisture in the air. So there's less supercooled water in the clouds compared to a summer storm. When the right conditions do occur, it usually happens near the Great Lakes in the United States. In places like this, the cold air above mixes with the warm water from the lakes. This big difference in temperature creates areas where the air rises quickly. And those rising pockets can cause lightning and thunder during heavy lake-effect snowstorms. They're also more common in the Colorado Front Range and Upper Great Plains. Another difference between thundersnow and a regular summer storm is that it's much harder to spot thundersnow. Snow absorbs sound waves, so you can only hear thunder if you're within a few miles of it. It will be more like a low rumble than a loud, sharp bang. And it's harder to see a flash of lightning against the backdrop of a bright white sky filled with flurries. This way, thundersnow can catch you off guard and strike just like any lightning. Although, lightning and thunder that come with a snowstorm are usually less frequent and less intense than those that come with summer storms. So, perhaps the worst thing that comes with thundersnow is those heavy snowfalls that can cause chaos on the roads and leave you without power for days. Another cool and rare winter weather phenomenon is the snow donut. You won't want to eat this donut as it looks like snowy wheels or tires. You can mostly find these rare natural snow shapes in the open prairies of North America or some remote places in Northern Europe. They need the perfect mix of conditions to form. First, there needs to be a layer of wet snow on the ground. The surface has to be something the wet snow can't stick to, like ice or very soft, powdery snow. Then, a strong but gentle wind or gravity on a hill has to push the snow just right. As the snow moves, it rolls up like a carpet and forms a big donut with a hole in the middle. Ever heard of the red lightning called Sprites? Unlike regular lightning that strikes down from the clouds to the ground, they shoot up high into the atmosphere, about 50 miles above Earth. They're super fast, lasting just a tiny moment, so they're really hard to spot or study. Sprites happen because of a buildup of electricity in clouds, just like normal lightning. They're usually red and can look like jellyfish or carrots and get up to 30 miles wide. Pilots flying in high-altitude planes get the best views, and you can't see it from the ground. Scientists think sprites could happen on other planets with atmospheres. They tested this idea in a lab by recreating those planets' atmospheres and running electricity through them. It turned out they were right. A fall streak hole is a big circular or oval-shaped gap that sometimes appears in certain clouds. These types of clouds float high up in the sky and are often made of tiny water droplets that are colder than freezing, but they haven't frozen yet. They need ice crystals to freeze. When a plane flies through the cloud, it can bring those ice crystals into the cloud. Once they're there, the water droplets freeze quickly, get bigger, and start to fall from the cloud. This creates a hole in the cloud, and as more nearby droplets freeze, the hole gets bigger and spreads outward. A mini tornado that spins up a lot of dust and dirt on a hot day is called a dust devil. They're little whirlwinds filled with dust and debris, and they can happen all over the world. They're smaller and not as strong as tornadoes, but they can still be powerful enough to knock over small objects or lift light things into the air. In really hot desert areas, they can grow much taller and last longer, sometimes for over an hour. Dust devils form on sunny days when the ground gets super hot. Once the dust devil is spinning fast enough, it acts like a chimney, with hot air rising up and cooler air sinking down through the middle. Dust devils can be dangerous if they're strong enough, so it's best to stay out of their way. Have you ever seen a fog bow? They form in a similar way to regular colorful rainbows, but they're much wider. Fog bows are made by tiny droplets in fog or clouds instead of big raindrops like in regular rainbows, but they also appear opposite the sun. You need to look for a fog bow in a thin fog when the sun is bright. You might catch one when the sun starts to shine through the fog, or if you're near the ocean, where fog often forms. Because the water droplets in the fog are so tiny, fog bows don't have the regular bright rainbow colors. They might even look all white or faint. Some fog bows are hard to see at first because they blend into the mist, but once you spot them, they're easy to recognize. There are atmospheric rivers flowing high up in the sky. They're long, thin streams of air in the atmosphere that carry a lot of water vapor. Even though you can't see them, they sometimes hold as much water as the Mississippi River carries in one day. When these sky rivers reach land, the water vapor inside them often turns into rain or snow. Some are gentle and helpful, bringing much-needed water to dry areas. But the really big and powerful ones can cause heavy rainstorms or snowstorms. If they stop moving over certain areas, they can lead to flooding, mudslides, and other problems. One famous atmospheric river is called the Pineapple Express. It gets its name because it pulls warm, wet air all the way from tropical areas near Hawaii to places like the US West Coast. Mammatus clouds are some of the strangest and coolest ones in the sky, looking like big, fluffy pouches or bubbles. Their shape can change a lot. Some look like smooth bubbles and others stretch out like long tubes. Mammatus clouds usually form under big clouds. Inside these storm clouds, strong winds cause turbulence, which pushes air and moisture downward instead of upward like regular clouds. This creates those uneven, pouchy shapes. Because Mammatus clouds are connected to powerful storm clouds, they're often a sign of bad weather, like heavy rain, hail, or lightning. In the winter, if it's cold enough, they can sometimes bring snow. Sometimes they appear with other, calmer clouds, but that's pretty rare. The best time to see Mammatus clouds is when the sun is low in the sky, like at sunrise or sunset. The sunlight lights up the pouches, making them glow and look even more amazing.
Uh-oh, a strong wind is blowing. Black clouds cover the sky. Thunder is rumbling and is pouring down with rain. A storm is coming, but you don't care. You're sitting in your apartment listening to music and typing something on your computer. You hear a thunderclap. Look out the window and see a heavy downpour, a tornado, and lightning flashes. You close all the windows and go back to the computer. And then, bam! It seems that lightning has struck near your house. Your laptop and all electrical appliances in the home go off. The light goes out. You get scared. At this moment, you hear a strange hissing sound. You see how, like a phantom, a round, glowing ball of electricity flies into your house through a closed window. It penetrates your room, hovers in the air, waits for something, and then flies back through the walls. The lights turn on, and everything comes back to normal. You've just seen a real natural phenomenon called ball lightning, and you're fortunate to be alive after meeting it. This is a rare phenomenon. Ball lightning occurs during a thunderstorm in the form of a floating sphere. It can change color from blue to orange and yellow. It's the approximate size of a basketball, but can also be much more significant. This lightning makes a hissing sound and a pungent smell. Phew! The first records of ball lightning were made in 1638 in England. Then, a giant glowing ball flew into the church window. Since then, there have been a lot of evidence of how ball lightning got into houses and frightened people. In the 20th and 21st centuries, scientists actively investigated this phenomenon. They found out that half of the cases with ball lightning were just hallucinations caused by magnetic fields during a thunderstorm. But they couldn't wholly refute the fact of the existence of ball lightning. They agreed that this phenomenon existed, and once they even managed to record it. The phenomenon of ball lightning was caught in China. Researchers studied the behavior of thunderstorms in 2012 using video cameras and spectrometers. They saw an unusual lightning strike, after which the ball appeared. It flew horizontally about 33 feet and disappeared. The spectrometer showed that the ball consisted of silicon, iron, and calcium. If it's real, then what is its nature? There are several theories. Perhaps the ball lightning occurs as a result of a lightning strike on the ground. Oxygen and evaporated elements from the soil create a reaction in the form of a round clot of energy. This explains why the spectrometer in 2012 recorded the same calcium in the ball lightning as in the ground. Another theory says that glass can generate these balls. Atmospheric ions accumulate on the glass surface and create an electric field. Together with a lightning strike, this field turns into ball lightning. That's why there's so much evidence that the sphere flies into the building through the window. In 2016, scientists pointed out that a lightning strike on the ground created microwave radiation that can form into a plasma bubble. This floating electric plasma takes a round shape and hovers in the air for a few seconds. Earthquakes can cause ball lightning too. During ground tremors, flashes of light appear from the depths of the crust. It's like lightning that comes not from the sky, but from the ground. Some of these lights may look like floating blue spheres. In 2014, scientists studied earthquake lights and found that some rocks emit electrical discharges during seismic wave impacts. In 2006, researchers at a university in Tel Aviv created a laboratory to study ball lightning. They used microwave radiation to recreate a lightning-like electric charge. In 2018, quantum physicists made a complex synthetic magnetic field similar to ball lightning. Physicists, chemists, meteorologists, and other scientists have conducted research and laboratory experiments many times to understand the nature of this phenomenon. But so far, no one has succeeded. Other glowing balls are less dangerous, but still mysterious. In clear weather, you can see strange glowing lights away from cities, somewhere in a swampy area. Previously, when there was no electricity, people noticed these lights. They thought someone needed help. What if some guy is stuck in the swamp and shines a kerosene lamp to get seen? People went to these lights to help, but fell into the swamp, and the light either flew away or disappeared. Some records speak of several lights at once. They move quickly and change their colors. Many believe that these were some kind of mystical creatures that lured people into traps. But over time, scientists managed to uncover the mystery of this phenomenon. Bioluminescent fungi and algae grow in swampy places. Sometimes they glow with blue light and create the illusion of glowing lights from a distance. Also, there's a lot of plant material in the swamps: leaves, grass, mud, clay, and tree branches. These substances decompose rapidly in humid conditions and release methane. As soon as methane contacts air, it ignites. The flame flies over the swamp in the form of a burning ball. Mysterious lights appear not only in swamps. People see them in deserts or mountainous areas. Sometimes it's headlights from cars. In other cases, it's the signal lights of an airplane. But in many cases, the nature of such lights remains unknown. And now, imagine a huge ball the size of a small city. It's like a dome, covers a large area, and protects it from tornadoes and storms. This phenomenon is called the Delco weather bubble and is located in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. That's how it all started. In 1996, one of the strongest snowstorms of the 20th century hit the U.S. East Coast. It was named the Blizzard of 1996. It covered almost all of Pennsylvania, But in the small town of Delaware County, Delco for short, the weather was good. The storm raged around but didn't touch the city. Since that year, the locals have believed that an abnormal weather bubble protects their houses. However, there's no scientific evidence of the existence of this bubble. After the blizzard of 1996, there were several more storms in the area, and forecasters claimed some storms would also cover Delco. But contrary to their forecasts, the weather there was excellent. Strangely, there is no meteorological evidence of this. One of the residents decided to investigate this phenomenon seriously. He followed the weather forecasts, looked at satellite photos, and saw how the black clouds diverged around the city. It rained heavily in the neighboring towns, but not Delco. This seems like convincing proof. And the question remains, should we believe the locals? There's one scientific explanation explaining the nature of this phenomenon. Storms may weaken here thanks to the sea air that accumulates in the Delco area. The street and the city's surrounding area are filled with this humid, cold air. It creates a sort of stabilization of the atmosphere, and when intense storms from the west collide with Delco's air, they lose a significant part of their strength. And it seems as if bad weather just bypasses the city. But there's another explanation, a psychological one. All the known information about the weather bubble came from the stories of residents. They seek confirmation of this phenomenon and write about it on social media. Someone said that they'd seen a tornado pass by his house. Others claimed that the bubble had saved them from a downpour. People think that it didn't affect others if there was no trouble with their house. Imagine the TV says that a storm has started in your city. You look out of the window and see a clear sky, no wind and rain. It seems to you that the bubble has saved you again. Although behind you, a few hundred feet from your backyard, a tornado is raging and tearing the roofs off of buildings. But you didn't see it and wrote to the social network that Delco has saved your city again. In this sense, the weather bubble becomes more like a virtual one, thanks to the people who write about it. Yep, there's ice all around, as far as the eye can see. A white desert covers the entrance to your cave, the one where you and a bunch of other settlers live. Everyone's gathered around a fire pit, trying to keep warm, telling each other stories about how much snow they saw the other day. Some are running around playing tag, throwing sticks, whatever people used to do for fun 300,000 years ago. You're one of the earliest Homo sapiens to ever walk the earth. Others are sleeping or just resting their eyes. All around the cave, all you can hear are stomachs rumbling, sounds like a wild animal lurking around. You look out the mouth of the cave and see that the storm has cleared. Time to grab some tools and head out as a group. In the open wilderness, you find some berries covered in snow and plants that might be edible. But it's not enough to feed the whole tribe. It's the Ice Age, and there's not much vegetation growing anywhere. One of your friends spots some large footprints in the snow. The chase is on. You can't tell what it is, but it should be enough to feed everyone for a couple of days. As you go deeper into the snow-covered forest, you hear a growl behind you. You hope it's your stomach, but you look behind you and suddenly black out. An ice age is a period when large sheets of ice cover everything, changing the Earth permanently. It's partly responsible for the raising and lowering of sea levels, as well as the current layout of the continents. Picture monster-thick ice sheets spread across what's now Canada, Scandinavia, Russia, and even South America. That's all caused sea levels to change drastically, and temperatures around the world fell dramatically. And I'm not talking about just one ice age. There were a bunch of them. Scientists say there have been 5 major ice ages throughout history, lasting for millions of years. And we're in the middle of one right now. Relax, don't panic. It doesn't mean we're all going to be sleeping next to bonfires, trying to keep warm after being out all day looking for woolly mammoths. And no, there won't be a massive geological ice storm that freezes everything in its path. Ice ages have warmer periods in them that come and go, lasting for tens of thousands of years. In fact, billions of years ago, The Earth was one giant snowball with no life on it, and the sun back then was also just a cute little fireball without enough heat to melt all that ice. But as the sun got bigger and hotter, Earth's ice slowly melted away, leaving the green and blue ball we have today. We're living in the Quaternary Ice Age that's been going on for the past 2.6 million years, and counting. Some animals have thrived in this latest ice age, like whales and sharks. They've been at the top of the food chain for ages. Under them are seals, certain kinds of fish, otters, all the way down to tiny plankton. Up on the cold surface, mammals had to grow thick and shaggy fur just to stay warm. Ancient mammoths, rhinos, and bison were known to have thick rugs on them. They looked awesome. They were herbivores and ate small shrubs and whatever grass they could find. But several thousand years ago, temperatures began to rise, and most of these animals became extinct. The ones that remained evolved into the elephants, hippos, and rhinos we have today. You wake up from your blackout and find yourself face to face with a creature that kind of looks like a modern-day bobcat, except it's much bigger and furrier. It's a Smilodon, an epic version of a saber-toothed cat with a mean look. It's around the same size as a male lion and has two front fangs that make me think twice before leaving the safety of my cave. They look scary, but scientists think their bite wasn't as powerful as today's tigers or lions. What made them tough were their giant forearms used to wrestle down anyone who got on their nerves. In packs, they were even able to take down mammoths. Either way, you don't want to be waking up next to this kitty. It's staring you down, ready to pounce. But you and your friends keep calm and slowly back off. You get the genius idea to throw a rock to distract it, then run. Nowadays, it's near impossible for a human to outsprint a lion or tiger, but humans back then were much fitter. Once the danger's over, everyone continues to look for food. It's getting dark, and you haven't found anything to bring back to the cave. Suddenly, you smell something burning. Way off in the distance, you see a thin column of smoke rising into the sky. Another settlement? You and your friends look at each other and approach the smoke cautiously. Homo sapiens first came into being about 200 or 300 years ago. But human history didn't just pop up out of nowhere. As far back as 7 million years ago, some of us decided to call it quits. We left our chimpanzee ancestors in the jungle and started doing our own thing. And that didn't just happen once. Over those next millions of years, there were over 20 different human species. Some were our ancestors, some were twigs from a completely different branch. Some were tiny, others better adapted for hot or cold weather. Before you know it, you see a group of Neanderthals cooking some meat, sharpening their tools. Neanderthals were the first to migrate to Europe. Scientists believe they were around somewhere between 40,000 to 400,000 years ago. They occupied all areas between Europe and Asia, while Homo sapiens, that's us, were still all the way down in Africa. You enter their camp and immediately see the differences between each other. They're stocky and look a bit different, but there are some similarities, like flat teeth for chewing and gnawing and big skulls for their big brains. They even have clothes on, like you. According to archaeologists, they lived in shelters and made tools out of stone, sticks, and bones. They welcome you inside and give you a tour like no other. You're officially meeting another human species. They take you inside their cave and show you some of their cave paintings. They were the first artists of their time. Many of their galleries are still around today, like the ones in caves in Spain. You know their style: minimalist paintings of deer, a large handprint. They also dabbled a bit in jewelry making. They made necklaces out of eagle talons and animal fangs. They were also probably the first ones to harness the power of fire. Did they discover it when a bolt of lightning hit a tree? Or when one of them dropped a rock on another rock, creating a spark? No one really knows. But they were able to recreate it and use it to keep warm, to cook food, to see in the darkness and to protect themselves. After the nice tour, you hang around the campfire to keep warm. They even offer you some extra clothes for the journey home, mostly thick, shaggy mammoth coats. If only you could talk to each other, that would be awesome. But it's getting dark, and you need to head back to the tribe. You say your goodbyes and thank them for teaching you how to draw a deer, and for that sack of food they gave you. The Ice Age was important for the development of the modern Homo sapiens. Because of the extreme cold and other harsh conditions, they had to adapt to survive, be extra clever and innovative. They developed advanced tools and even used bone needles to sew warm clothing. They may have hosted the first ever runway show. When the climate started to get warmer, they developed farming techniques to sustain themselves and mainly settled near large bodies of water like rivers or lakes, while others opted to be near seas and oceans. We, were even the first to domesticate animals. Fast forward a few 100,000 years and here we are.
When lightning flashes across the sky, it releases somewhere around 300 million volts, or the equivalent to power 25 million car batteries. Some say you're more likely to be zapped by lightning in your lifetime than to win the lottery. And statistics seem to prove this urban myth, as each year around 28 US locals do get electrically charged from the sky. The world's infrastructure can be affected by lightning too. That's because it generally seeks out the tallest structure around. But in certain conditions, it can also strike an open field. So scientists came together and invented a laser lightning rod that might help. This unique invention might make lightning strikes a bit more manageable, since it can guard a much larger area than the traditional one, and it's flexible. Classic lightning rods work like magnets for that powerful electrical charge. There are these tall metal devices placed on top of buildings. When a storm approaches, the rod provides an easy path for lightning to follow, preventing it from hitting other parts of the structure. The rod is also connected to the ground with a conductor, like a wire, helping the electrical charge to safely make its way into the earth. This process protects the building and the humans in it by directing the electrical energy away. We've been using lightning rods for the last 300 years, courtesy of Benjamin Franklin. But they're not damage-proof. When it comes to safeguarding vast spaces like airports, they can't manage. That's because they can only cover an area proportional to their height. Here's where this new, improved lightning rod can help. When the laser zaps the sky, it leaves behind a trail of superheated air called plasma. The same way a sculptor carves out traces in clay, the laser creates channels in the air. These channels then become the lightning's new favorite route, guiding it down to the ground. This new method was tested in the Swiss Alps back in 2021, and the results were promising. These lasers do have their own disadvantages. They aren't always available and need a heads up. That's because they have to be activated before a bolt hits. If you're a second too late, tough luck. Also, once the laser stops, the air loses its conductivity pretty quickly. This means the laser rod might not have enough power to guide the lightning safely. A potential solution might be monitoring the electric field around a certain area, predicting where lightning might strike. Yet, these new rods still need more testing and lots of funds. The European Space Agency found another way to make lasers useful: to turn moon dust into roads. It would make our future lunar exploration missions much easier if a laser beam could do the hard jobs, allowing astronauts to drive around the moon. This discovery might also help with another tricky issue: moon dust clinging to everything in sight. Roads on the moon might seem too much of a hassle for now, since we haven't been to our satellite since 1972. But when future space explorers will touch down again, they don't just plan to walk small distances. It'll be nice to have them driving around so they can explore larger areas. Problem is, that pesky moon dust is very fine, abrasive, and sticky. Back during the Apollo missions, it clogged up equipment, eroded spacesuits, and even caused a lunar rover to overheat. That's why scientists want to zap simulated moon dirt with a laser. This laser-powered project used a 12-kilowatt laser to melt simulated moon dirt into a solid, glassy surface, perfect for moon roads. The plan isn't to send a huge laser on the moon. This device they're testing here on Earth is like a stand-in for the sun, mimicking what lunar sunlight could do. The idea is to eventually concentrate sunlight using a big lens on the moon's surface. Some experiments have been done so far with different laser sizes, finding that a bigger beam made the whole process go smoother. Instead of dealing with tiny molten balls, they got a stable layer of molten moon dirt that's easier to work with. What they got was a glassy, somewhat brittle material that can handle downward forces. And even if it cracks, it's fixable. The laser beam was used to make triangle-shaped road parts that fit together like puzzle pieces, forming solid surfaces across lunar soil. If this goes as planned, we'll have moon roads made of interlocked triangles. This unique type of moon pavement could be the solution for landing pads too. Lasers can help piece together information on long-lost civilizations too. Discovering Maya cities has always been difficult for researchers exploring Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. For years, experts believed no early civilization could have thrived in that harsh environment. But advancements like light mapping technology and laser scans are showing us this might not be true. Lidar technology can lend a helping hand for archaeologists, especially in areas that are hard to physically reach. That's because it's like we're equipping computers with a pair of eyes. The whole thing works as a flashlight, sending out small light beams in the form of a pulsated laser. These beams bounce off objects like trees and buildings and come back to the flashlight. Lidar measures how long it takes for the light to return, creating a map of the surroundings. When a self-driving car or robot wants to know where it is, it uses Lidar to send out these light beams. By figuring out how long they take to come back and where they hit, the car or robot can understand what's around it, making it safer for them to move around through the fog or at nighttime without bumping into things. With this technology, a team uncovered the massive Maya city of Acomtun. Lidar technology helped researchers to map the jungle floor, revealing hidden structures. Yet someone still needed to verify these findings on foot. The journey to Acomtun wasn't extremely challenging. The region, quite far from the nearest airport, is mostly unexplored, accessible only through old hunting and logging routes. The dense terrain made the trek challenging, taking the team up to 2 weeks to cover just 30 miles. But the effort paid off, revealing monumental structures like a large acropolis and intriguing shapes hinting at a marketplace or cultural center. Lidar is also used in rovers we'll need to explore other planets. This will allow the robots we send up there to navigate their surroundings without direct human indications. It's also helped us better understand the best location to place solar panels, making it cheaper and faster for us to meet our energy needs. We might also be able to use lasers to predict how a volcano is gonna act. These structures are loaded with magma, the molten rock sneaking upwards from the Earth's insides. When a volcano blows its top, a chemical reaction happens, transforming magma into what we call lava. The specialists behind this new use of lasers think of magma as the computer code of volcanoes. It reveals information on how a volcano might pop up. That's because not all eruptions bring lava, and even if they do, there are different lava types, depending on how runny it is. Magma is like a mix of liquid, gas, and crystals that are shaken up inside the volcano. There are many elements at play before a volcanic eruption, so it's hard to study and understand that complex chemistry. To organize things around a bit, scientists hit the cooled magma, the rock matrix, with a laser, just like the ones you might have encountered if you've ever had eye surgery. It makes the chemical components easier to study. This latest laser eye method was used on samples from a 2021 eruption, which lasted 85 days. It covered over 4 square miles, spewing loads of lava that wrecked over 1,000 homes and displaced over 7,000 people. To prevent such events from happening again, scientists need more data. It's true, earthquakes and ground shifts help specialists predict what a volcano might do, but knowing a bit more about its chemistry can help a bit more. You're dozing off in your window seat on a plane. It's getting dark since it's almost 11 p.m. Suddenly, something wakes you up. You glance out of the window and see a really strange phenomenon, something that creeps you out. There are bright red, huge flashes illuminating the sky at a distance. They resemble some nightmarish jellyfish. Those are sprites, also called red sprites due to their color. They're also known as cloud-to-space lightning. These varied visual shapes flickering in the night sky are large-scale electric discharges, which is a clever word for a lightning strike. They occur high above thunderstorm clouds at altitudes of 30 to 56 miles. That's why you can see them so well from your plane window. The coolest thing about sprites is that they're positively charged lightning. This is a very rare type that makes up a mere 5% of all lightning strikes. People first spotted this phenomenon in 1886, and it was first photographed in 1989. In 2018, the legendary Niagara Falls, located at the border between New York State and Ontario, Canada, managed to surprise everyone. Tourists who came to admire the roaring waters found the falls frozen. Well, the waterfalls weren't frozen per se. This is impossible for a mass of flowing water that huge, but microscopic water droplets, as well as the mist, formed a crust of ice over the rushing water. It created an illusion that Niagara Falls was frozen all over. In reality, the water kept flowing beneath the ice. Imagine ponds filled with ice-cold water and covered with ice. Easy, huh? And now picture dozens of alligator snouts that are poking out of the ponds, still and frozen in ice. That's what you'd seen if you had visited the swamps of North Carolina at the beginning of 2018. Despite this terrifying picture, the animals were very much alive. That was a very special crocodile way to survive abnormally cold weather. Since their nostrils were above water, the animals could breathe. Meanwhile, their bodies were in a hibernation-like state. It allowed the animals to conserve energy and stay warm. In the winter of 2018, the inhabitants of the Sahara Desert, one of the driest and hottest places on the planet, woke up to discover a thick layer of snow covering the sand. In some places, its depth reached a staggering 15 inches. Meteorologists had an explanation for this exciting phenomenon. They said that cold pools of air combined with the precipitation of the most recent storm resulted in snowfall instead of rain. It happened in June 2009. People in some areas in Japan left their homes after a heavy downpour, only to find fish, frogs, and tadpoles everywhere. Fields, roads, lawns, and house roofs were littered with these creatures. One man even found 13 carp on and around his truck. No one knows for sure where this bizarre rain came from, but the most popular theory is that a powerful water spout picked up the animals. Then it carried them through the upper atmosphere and dropped them on the unsuspecting people below. In Australia, it sometimes rains spiders. That's because these creatures can balloon. It's a highly unusual way of traveling. A spider climbs to the very top of a tall tree or shrub, and then it spins several strands of silk, which then help the spider to be carried away by the wind. It's not easy to spot ballooning spiders, but sometimes when the weather is especially damp and unpleasant, mass ballooning occurs. Millions of spiders set off on a journey to find another place with better conditions. It may look as if it's snowing outside, but no. Those are spiders drifting down to the ground. The world's longest lightning storms happen in Venezuela and can last for 9 hours per day. The heart of the storm is over Lake Maracaibo, and the clouds tower way higher than your regular thunderstorm clouds. This natural phenomenon, also known as Catatumbo lightning, occurs during 140 to 160 nights a year and can produce up to 28 lightning strikes per minute. You've probably heard how they say that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. Well, Catatumbo lightning seems not to know about this rule. At least, it doesn't prevent storm clouds from gathering in the very same place year after year. Volcanic tornadoes are possibly one of the most terrifying natural phenomena. When a volcano erupts, it spews red-hot rock and ash high into the atmosphere. And solid lava pieces and hot gases travel down the volcano's slope. When this flow is moving down, some of the trapped gases begin to rise and spin at the same time. They get squeezed by the surrounding air, which makes them spin faster and faster. That's how a volcanic tornado gets born. Luckily, this phenomenon has a very short lifespan. Even though the island of Newfoundland in Canada can't be called the warmest place on Earth, it's still not that cold. But imagine having to shovel snow in front of your house just several days before your summer vacation. Well, that's exactly what happened on the island in June 2018. A cold storm that came from the coast of Newfoundland covered several regions of the islands with a 2-inch layer of snow. On top of that, the temperature broke all the records as well. During a Newfoundland summer, it's about 66 degrees on average, and 90 degrees on a very hot day. But that infamous June impressed people with only 37 degrees Fahrenheit in the morning. Brrr! Morning glory clouds are extremely rare. They look like massive tubes stretching across the sky. They can snake for more than 600 miles, sitting relatively low. Most researchers agree that these clouds appear when an updraft squeezes through the cloud. This creates the signature rolling appearance. The cool air at the back of the cloud makes it sink downward. The best but not the only place to see the morning glory is Australia's Gulf of Carpentaria. If you decide to travel there to see these clouds, choose a period from late September to early November. On March 19, 2018, the inhabitants of Alabama saw huge chunks of ice falling from the sky. It was the infamous hailstorm of Alabama which caused millions of dollars worth of damage. After the hailstorm, the place looked ruined. Broken shop windows, smashed car windshields, broken billboards, and holes in the roofs. But what made researchers really excited was a hailstone found near the town of Columnar, Alabama. This softball-sized monster was more than 5 inches across, setting a new state record. In 2012, the sky over Dorset, England, turned first ominously dark, then yellow. After that, blue gelatinous balls started to fall to the ground. A local man was walking to his garage when he spotted something unusually bright among whitish hailstones. When researchers examined this jelly rain, they found out that the balls were made of the substance used in diapers or potting soil. It's used to absorb liquid. It's still unclear whether the balls fell from the sky, or maybe the melting ice made a few already existing crystals expand in the blink of an eye. In March 2018, people in northern Nevada could see the rarest and most bizarre cloud ever, a horseshoe cloud. It sure looks bizarre and kinda scary. But meteorologists know that this interestingly shaped vortex happens when a flat cloud travels over a column of warm, rising air. This air creates the shape and adds some spin to the cloud's movements. Such clouds are very fleeting and usually last for only several minutes. Cylindrical snow donuts occur when a wind gust decides to play snowballs. It starts to roll some snow across a snowy area. If it was a real snowball, it would eventually become too heavy for the wind to move. But the center of a snow donut is hollowed out. This happens because its inner layer is too thin and gets blown away when the donut is formed. This makes it lighter than a regular snowball. That's why it also rolls further. Unfortunately, you can't just go and find snow donuts. They're rare because they appear in very precise conditions.
Hey, want to hear something shocking? In an ordinary house outlet that we use to charge the phone, the voltage is 110 volts. A high-voltage power line that provides electricity to dozens of buildings has a voltage of 100,000 volts. The energy of one lightning strike is more than 10 million volts. Woo! And the temperature of lightning is almost twice the temperature on the sun's surface. And this incredible charge is flying at a speed of just 2.5 times slower than the speed of light. Now imagine what happens to a person when lightning strikes them. Well, let me tell you, the discharge passes through the body in 1/100th of a second. Lightning can stop our hearts and disrupt the work of our entire nervous system. You may not even realize what has happened at first. Perhaps you will lose consciousness and your body will be in a state of shock. Every day there are several million lightning strikes in the world. Fortunately, you have little chance of getting hit by one. The odds that lightning will strike you is about 15,300 to 1. About 20,000 people are struck by lightning every year. The chances that lightning will strike you twice are even smaller. And what are the odds that you'll be struck by lightning 7 times throughout your life? It seems impossible, but one person experienced it for himself. His name was Roy Sullivan. He was born in 1912 in Greene County, Virginia, in a big family with 7 children. Roy was an ordinary guy and was no different from his brothers and sisters. But for some reason, the natural element chose him. In 1936, he began working as a ranger at Shenandoah National Park. There, lightning struck him 7 times over 35 years. So, the first accident happened in April 1942. On that day, a strong thunderstorm began. Roy took refuge in a new fire tower where builders hadn't installed a lightning rod. Lightning struck the building several times. A massive fire started inside and Roy ran out. As soon as he was a few feet away from the shelter, lightning hit his toe and burned a hole in his shoe. The next time occurred 27 years later, in July 1969. Roy was working in the national park. He was driving a truck through hilly terrain when a storm started. Lightning struck him through the open car window. The charge burned his eyebrows and eyelashes and slightly touched his hair. Roy lost consciousness and the car continued to move. It stopped at the very edge of a cliff. 15 minutes later, Roy came to his senses. A year later, in July 1970, the third time occurred. The weather was fine, but in a matter of minutes, clouds became thicker and a thunderstorm began. Lightning struck a transformer near Roy. The man ran away as fast as possible, but nature got him again. Lightning hit his shoulder. 2 years later, in 1972, lightning struck Roy for the 4th time while he was working at the National Park Station. The charge set his hair on fire, and the man ran to the bathroom and used a wet towel to put out the flames on his burning head. From that moment, Roy began to suspect that some invisible evil force had been pursuing him. He started to carry a bottle of water with him to put out the fire in case of another hit. The 5th strike happened in the national park again. It occurred in 1973. Roy tripped over a rock and fell. At that moment, he noticed thunderclouds in the sky. Frightened, he ran to his truck, got inside, and stepped on the gas. Roy drove as far from that spot as possible. Then he stopped and got out of the car to see where the storm was. And at that moment, lightning struck again. It went through his left arm and left leg and set his shoe on fire. Roy quickly climbed back into the truck and extinguished the fire using his water bottle. In 1976, the 6th case occurred. Roy was walking along a trail in the park, just 1 mile away from the place where lightning struck him the last time. And then storm clouds appeared again. Lightning flashed and stung Roy in the palm. After the 6th strike, he began to suspect something was wrong with the park. After 40 years of working, Roy finally decided to quit. Finally. He hoped the lightning would stop chasing him, but he was wrong. By that time, the man had already become a celebrity. But such fame didn't let him enjoy life. People were afraid to be near him because they believed the lightning could hit them at any moment. Journalists gave Roy Sullivan the nicknames Spark Ranger and Human Lightning Conductor. Of course, the man disliked all of this and felt very lonely. But besides this problem, he also suffered from constant fears and the feeling of persecution. All the time, he was waiting for the lightning to strike again at any moment. Fortunately, he was married. His wife supported him and helped him in everything. After quitting his job, Roy decided to move with his wife to the small town of Dooms, Virginia. Wow, Dooms. Talk about foreshadowing. It was only a year without accidents. Then, on June 25, 1977, lightning struck Roy again. He went fishing at the local pond early in the morning. The catch was good, but the sky was overcast. Roy immediately felt there would be a strike. There was a smell of sulfur in the air, and the hairs on his arms stood on end. His whole body tensed. Lightning struck Roy in the head, passing through his chest and stomach. The man ran to his car to take cover. At that moment, a hungry bear came out of the forest. He approached Roy's bucket of fish to pick up all the trout the man had caught. Roy ran out of the vehicle with his hair on his head smoldering to chase the animal away. After the seventh lightning strike, he lost hearing in his left ear and realized he couldn't hide from the lightning anywhere. His wife was afraid to be with him outside during a thunderstorm. One day, she was hanging laundry in the backyard. Roy came out of the house to help her. A few minutes later, lightning struck his wife. Fortunately, she wasn't badly injured. After that, besides fear and social loneliness, he felt guilt. Of course, many doctors and scientists tried to help Roy, but no one managed to find the reason for this strange phenomenon. According to science, each time it was just a coincidence. Mathematics and physics were powerless here. With such answers from scientists, Roy believed that invisible forces were pursuing him or that fate was punishing him for something. Perhaps the answer lies in the man's past. The National Park Service and doctors documented all 7 times when he was struck by lightning. But there was another 8th time, which couldn't be confirmed. According to Roy, lightning struck him in his youth when he was helping his father mow wheat. The discharge hit the scythe blade. No one but the boy saw it. Perhaps at that moment, the lightning changed something in his body and made him more attractive for the next hits. Lightning always chooses the path of least resistance. And this is how lightning occurs. Rain, ice, and snow particles collide with one another inside a storm. This process increases the imbalance between clouds and the ground, negatively charging the lower layers of clouds. Things down there, like trees and the earth, get positively charged and create another imbalance. Nature tries to remedy this imbalance between the two opposite charges by passing an electric current through them. Perhaps nature felt some charge imbalance in Roy's body and tried to remedy it. But why did he get struck at an interval of 1 to 2 years? Besides, more than 20 years passed between the first and second hit. Scientists still can't explain what happened to him. Maybe Roy was just an attractive guy. As you can probably predict, Roy Sullivan was listed in the Guinness Book of Records as the person struck by lightning most often in the world.
Look at this ominous dark cloud. Is it rotating? What on earth is happening here? What you see is called a supercell. It's a storm, often a thunderstorm, that contains an updraft rotating about a vertical axis. That's why they're also called rotating thunderstorms. There are actually 4 types of thunderstorms: single cell, multi-cell, squall line, and supercell. Out of them all, supercells are the rarest and the most severe. They're typically isolated from other thunderstorms and last for 2 to 4 hours. Supercells are very common for the Great Plains of the United States, in particular, the area known as Tornado Alley. But they can occur in other parts of the world too. For example, in Europe, Argentina, Uruguay, and southern Brazil. These storms can be any size, large and small, high or low topped. Supercells are also associated with the most severe tornadoes, even though not every supercell can create one. These storms usually produce great amounts of torrential rainfall and hail, and are accompanied by powerful winds and downbursts. Downbursts are powerful winds that come down from a thunderstorm. Once they hit the ground, they spread out very quickly. These winds are dangerous since they can cause a lot of damage. Even though they're often confused with tornadoes, downbursts are a totally different phenomenon. Let's have a look at how a downburst forms. At the beginning of a thunderstorm, there's a powerful updraft. That's why the cloud grows vertically, and hailstones and raindrops start forming inside. The storm matures, and the updraft keeps feeding the cloud with unstable, moist air. Hailstones and raindrops are now big and heavy enough to fall to the ground. But sometimes, the updraft is so strong that it suspends huge amounts of hail and rain in the upper part and the center of the storm. But let's say some dry air gets into the middle and lower parts of the storm. It can cause a downburst. When it happens, all that amount of rain and hail from the upper part of the storm dashes toward the ground, dragging along a lot of air. All this mass gains speed, and when the downburst eventually reaches the ground, it's like a stream of water coming out of a faucet and hitting the sink. It spreads in all directions at an incredible speed, sometimes more than 100 miles per hour. But what you might most likely come across is called a microburst. It means that those terrible winds are confined to an area smaller than 2.5 miles across. While speaking about tornadoes, I can't but mention volcanic tornadoes. They're possibly one of the scariest natural phenomena. When a volcano erupts, it throws hot rock and ash high into the atmosphere. As for lava pieces and hot gases, they travel down the volcano's slope. When this flow is moving down, some of the gases trapped inside begin to rise and spin at the same time. They get squeezed by the surrounding air, which makes them spin faster and faster. That's how a volcanic tornado gets born. On the bright side, this phenomenon has a very short lifespan. If you ever see a tight burning column of air, that's a fire tornado, a creepy combination of whirlwind sounds and scorching inferno. This phenomenon is also called a fire twister or fire whirl. This dangerous natural phenomenon mostly occurs during wildfires. While burning, such fires create a big area of boiling hot air just above the ground. And when this scorching air gets mixed with the cooler air higher up, it results in a whirlwind that churns up burning debris and flames. The most powerful firenados can stretch hundreds of feet into the sky. Another dangerous natural phenomenon is called a snow squall. If you get caught in a snow squall while driving, you won't find a safe place on a highway, because this is an intense, but thankfully pretty short, period of heavy snowfall that comes along with powerful gusty winds, and sometimes even lightning. People have known about this phenomenon for quite some time, but the term itself, as well as the warning associated with this danger, appeared only in 2018. Another danger of snow squalls is something called a flash freeze. Come to think of it, it makes sense. Rapidly dropping temperatures and freshly fallen snow glaze highways very fast. This makes controlling your car almost impossible. The next curious phenomenon I'm going to talk about happens extremely rarely and is still poorly understood. It's usually not something big and turbulent. Dust devils can be tiny and vanish within minutes. They've got lots of names: whirlwinds, dusters, and sand spouts. Dust devils look like funnels of sand spiraling upward from the ground. But unlike their terrifying relatives, tornadoes, these babies are normally nothing to worry about. And still, according to the definition, dust devils fall in the same category as hurricanes and tornadoes. All three natural phenomena feature a column of air kind of spinning around an invisible pole. They're all formed during the collision of different types of air: moist versus dry, or hot versus cold, and so on. But hurricanes usually form over a body of water where cold air slides under warm air. Tornadoes spiral down from the sky when hot air rises through a mass of cold air, and dust devils form on the ground. Even though we call them dust devils, they can actually swirl any loose debris. The main criteria: the pieces have to be small and light enough to be lifted by a fast-moving vortex. By the way, do you know that some clouds can predict extreme weather? For example, shelf clouds. They look like something from a sci-fi movie. They form when warm and moist air gets caught in a thunderstorm updraft. These ominous clouds most often mean a storm is coming. Those huge white lumps over your head are called Mammatus clouds. They can make you believe the sky is falling. Most clouds form when air rises into the atmosphere, but Mammatus clouds appear when moist and cool air goes down and mixes with dry air. The result is these unique puffed rice clouds. By the way, if you see this phenomenon in the sky, bad weather is just around the corner. Morning glory clouds are extremely rare and harmless. They look like massive tubes stretching across the sky. They can snake for more than 600 miles, sitting relatively low. Most researchers agree that these clouds appear when an updraft squeezes through the cloud. This creates the signature rolling appearance. The cool air at the back of the cloud makes it sink downward. The best, but not the only, place to see the morning glory is Australia's Gulf of Carpentaria. If you decide to travel there to see these clouds, choose a period from late September to early November. Ever seen huge round disks in the sky? Most likely, those were lenticular clouds. They usually form over large and high places, like mountains or hills. When strong wind bumps into some barrier, this creates an air wave. The air kinda wraps around the obstacle, and the higher the barrier is, the colder the air that is rising over it becomes. At some point, the moisture it contains turns into water droplets, and they form these unusual clouds. Lenticular clouds can look like waves, a pizza, or even a stack of pancakes. And these clouds, on the contrary, form low in the sky and after some bad weather. Rainbow clouds appear on top of puffy low-altitude clouds after thunderstorms. They usually hover at the height of around 6,000 feet. When the water vapor they contain condenses, the resulting droplets act like prisms. This forms multicolored caps over the clouds. And a pretty scary bonus fact for you. One of the most common causes of wildfires is lightning from thunderstorms. But have you ever heard of a wildfire that triggered a thunderstorm? Well, now you know. It happened on May 11th, 2018, not far from Amarillo, Texas. Then, the super powerful Mallard Fire not only created a massive dense cloud high in the air, but its heat also caused a violent thunderstorm that later dumped tons of quarter-sized hailstones 60 miles away in Wheeler County, Texas.
Well, this happened in June 2009. People in certain areas in Japan left their homes after a heavy downpour, only to find fish, frogs, and tadpoles everywhere. Fields, roads, lawns, rooftops were littered with these aquatic creatures. One man was shocked to see 13 carp on and around his truck. Apparently, he stopped to count them. No one knows for sure where the bizarre rain came from, but the most popular theory claims that a powerful waterspout picked up all these creatures. Then it carried them through the upper atmosphere and dropped the animals on the unsuspecting people below. Shelf clouds look like something from a sci-fi movie. They form when warm and moist air gets caught in a thunderstorm updraft. These ominous clouds most often mean a storm is coming. Breathtaking rainbow clouds appear on top of cotton-like puffy clouds after thunderstorms. The puffy clouds are low-altitude ones. They usually hover at a height of around 6,000 feet. When the water vapor they contain condenses, the resulting droplets act like prisms. This forms multicolored caps over the clouds. Morning glory clouds are extremely rare. They look like massive tubes stretching across the sky. They can snake for more than 600 miles, sitting relatively low. Most researchers agree that these clouds appear when an updraft squeezes through the cloud. This creates the signature rolling appearance. The cool air at the back of the cloud makes it sink downward. The best, But not the only place to see morning glory is Australia's Gulf of Carpentaria. If you decide to travel there to see these clouds, choose a period from late September to early November. It was 2012 when the sky turned first ominous dark, then yellow. After that, blue gelatinous balls started to fall to the ground. A man from the UK found these balls outside during a hailstorm. He was walking to his garage when he spotted something unusually bright among the whitish hailstones. When researchers examined this jelly rain, they found out the balls were made from the substance used in diapers or potting soil. It's used to absorb liquid. It's still unclear whether the balls fell from the sky, or maybe the melting ice made a few already existing crystals expand in the blink of an eye. Huge white lumps over your head are called Mammatus clouds. They can make you believe the sky is falling. Most clouds form when the air rises into the atmosphere, but not Mammatus ones. They appear when moist and cool air goes down and mixes with dry air. The result? Unique puffed rice clouds. By the way, if you spot this phenomenon, bad weather is just around the corner. Whoa, mama! Colorful nacreous clouds occur extremely high in the atmosphere. I mean, twice as high as a commercial airplane's cruising altitude. The air at such heights is extremely dry and cold. Ice crystals in nacreous clouds are much smaller than those that form more common clouds. They scatter light in a different way. And this gives the clouds their mother-of-pearl appearance. Blood rain looks more terrifying than any horror movie. But in reality, there's nothing strange or unnatural about this weather phenomenon. People have known about such scarlet-tinted rains since the time of ancient Rome. Sometimes powerful winds lift red dust into the atmosphere and carry it far, far away, to another galaxy. In the end, this dust gets mixed with clouds, which colors the rain. By the way, dust from coal mines can make the rain black. Pollen is responsible for yellow rains, and some other kinds of dust can turn the rainwater white. In Australia, it sometimes rains spiders. That's because these creatures can balloon. That's a highly unusual way of traveling. A spider climbs to the very top of a tall tree or shrub, and then it spins several strands of silk. These strands help the spider to be carried away by the wind. It's not easy to spot ballooning, but sometimes, if the weather is especially damp and unpleasant, mass ballooning happens, and then you can't help but pay attention. Millions of spiders set off on a journey to find another place with better conditions. It may seem like it's snowing outside, but no, those are spiders drifting down to the ground. Now, have you ever wondered about the longest time it rained nonstop? Even an hour of rain could be a big deal if you're hanging out in a dry spot like the Atacama Desert in South America. It can set a record for that place. But in super rainy spots like the Amazon rainforest, having 40 days of rain in a row might not even turn heads. Interestingly, we only have rainfall records where people live and keep track. Many towns and cities skip the whole rain data collection thing. Plus, there are so many places on Earth where nobody lives, like rainforests or the open ocean, so our rainfall knowledge is a bit patchy. Now, if we were to talk about records, Hawaii has a couple. People there have some seriously long rainy days, especially on islands where winds come from the mountains. From 1939 to 40, they recorded 331 days in a row with measurable rainfall. If you're a person who likes to watch the rain at home with a cup of tea, this might sound ideal to you. But we need to see the sun at least occasionally. Getting some sun is good for your body and soul. Obviously, you get vitamin D. Just 5 to 15 minutes of sunlight a few times a week can make a real difference. And have you ever heard the phrase sunny disposition? Researchers found that people feel down when there's not much sun around. Sunny days make us happier. Sunshine boosts your serotonin, which fights off bad moods. That sunny serotonin isn't just for your mood, it also helps you sleep. And it's also a heart assistant. When the sun hits your skin, your body releases something called nitric oxide, which chills out your blood pressure. Healthy blood pressure means a healthier heart. Now, go tell that to the people who had to go through 881 consecutive days of rain. Yeah, the record was set almost 3 full years of rain. This happened from 1913 to 1916 in Hononumomaki, Hawaii. It rained like there was no tomorrow because the region is a tropical rainforest. How do clouds make rain? Well, rain happens when damp air goes up into the sky and gets a bit chilly. As this air cools down, tiny water vapor molecules huddle up, forming super small droplets that look like a fluffy cloud team. Now, inside these clouds, things get playful. The air moving around can sometimes make these droplets bump into one another and get bigger. Then they can turn into ice crystals high up in the clouds where it's chilly. These little ice buddies get heavy enough to take a tumble down, melting in the rain on the way to the ground. Now, there isn't just one type of rain. Raindrops can come from all kinds of storms. Thunderstorms show up, make a splash, and then they're out. They can dump a ton of rain in no time. Other storms, like winter storms, are more laid back. They stick around for days and dish out gentle rain or even snow if it's cold enough. Usually, the weather switches between moods. It's nature's way of balancing things out. After stormy weather, the sun comes out, the air dries up, and we get to enjoy some clear skies. But things can get interesting if you're in a place with mountains near the ocean. When moist air hits the mountains, it's forced to climb over them, creating rainfall lasting sometimes for weeks. What if I told you there was a time on Earth when rain fell continuously for 2 million years and completely reshaped the planet's destiny? At the end of the Permian era, around 234 million years ago, I wasn't around then, but I read about it, the Triassic period began, marked by the onset of an extended period of rainfall. This phenomenon is now called the Carnian pluvial event. Well, that's what they decided to call it. Recent studies, supported by evidence, suggest that it didn't reshape the planet in that sense, and that it was triggered by coal combustion. The rain wasn't continuous either. So we just debunked a myth here. Woohoo! Next, we have columnar jointing. This is the fancy term for groove patterns that form in lava flows, sills, dikes, and other rocky stuff. These lava creations come in all shapes and sizes. Most are seen as straight, parallel columns. Some have curves and varying widths. They can be as high as 1,181 inches. I'll save you the math. It's roughly 98 feet. The columns are formed by pressure and the cooling process. As lava becomes cooler, it shrinks and forms cracks. Once a crack starts, the lava moves around. These cracks expand to the surface of the flow. Water sneaks into the cooling lava, making it chill down fast starting from the surface, leaving its mark in those patterns. Devil's Postpile in California is a must-visit place if you want to see columnar jointing. But hey, they're found all around the world. Let's raise our heads to the sky to see something magical. Fire rainbows, also known as circumhorizontal arcs, look like flames dancing above the clouds. To see these eye-catching arcs, you need a special cloud type called cirrus clouds and the sun at least 58 degrees high in the sky. It's a VIP collaboration between sunlight and clouds. Let's break it down further. Take London, for instance. It's around 51 degrees north. Now, sorry Londoners, no fire rainbows for you. Now we move to deep waters to see underwater crop circles. These are giant circular patterns found in 1995 near the shores of southern Japan. Locals were baffled. They dubbed them mystery circles, as if the ocean had a secret talent for sand art. The mystery was solved in 2011. The unlikely artist turned out to be a tiny pufferfish, just 5 inches long. The researchers found out that males were on a mission, spending a solid 7 to 9 days building their circles by swimming in and out and using their fins to carve valleys into the sandy floor. They decorate the peaks of their creations with bits of shells and corals, turning their sandy canvases into masterpieces. Okay, they don't do it for the sake of art. The curious circles have a purpose. The sandy center of the circle serves as a nest. Male swimming moves mix things up, getting sand particles just where they need to be. When a lady pufferfish swims by, the male twirls and dances, swirling sand around. If she is impressed and thinks he is the one, She lays her eggs in the sandy heart of the circle. There you go, another happy ending. Now let's look at frost flowers. You might have seen thin sheets of ice that look like delicate petals and sometimes pop up from the stems of plants. The ice is about as thick as a credit card. It forms when the weather is cold outside. The soil is damp but not frozen, as well as plant stems. Not all plants produce these frost flowers, and the conditions must be just right. Here's how it happens. The water inside a plant stem gets pulled up from the ground. When it freezes, it expands and cracks the stem vertically. As it hits the chilly air, it turns into ice. As more water gets pulled up through the crack, it keeps pushing out super thin layers of ice. Whether a frost flower looks like a narrow ribbon or a wider one depends on the length of the crack. And the way it curls and shapes itself into these petals is random, or the reason might lie in the difference in friction along the sides of the crack. These frost flowers are unique and delicate, and they don't last long. They melt or just disappear quickly. To spot them, keep an eye out for tall grass, especially in places that don't get mowed much. Pay attention to purple ironweed, blackberries, and wing stems. Now, there are things about nature that you know for sure, or don't you? Let's check how much you know about the incredible world we live in. How many of the 14 points will you guess? Let us know. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built when mammoths still roamed the earth. Myth or fact? It's actually a fact. The most famous pyramid in the world had been constructed about 500 years before woolly mammoths went extinct, approximately 4,000 years ago. Their last known habitat was the cold and deserted Wrangel Island in the Arctic Sea, which might not have been as cold then as it is today. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way. Is it myth or fact? It's a fact. Scientists used to believe there were about 4 billion trees on our planet, but more recent studies have shown that there are over 3 trillion of them, making it 420 trees per person. As for the stars in our galaxy, there are only about 100 billion, which is 30 times fewer than the trees on Earth alone. The trees you see are all individual ones. Myth or fact? This is false. In fact, 90% of the trees on Earth are interconnected by mycelium filaments. They send warning signals when in danger and exchange nutrients through them. It's kind of like the underground internet. Also, there are organisms like Pando, for example, which is the largest single living being on the planet. It looks like a dense forest of quaking aspens. In fact, it's basically a single giant tree, with its roots being interconnected underground. We drink the same water dinosaurs used to drink hundreds of millions of years ago. Myth or fact? Actually, it is. Only a small portion of the water on our planet has evaporated for good. The rest of it is constantly renewed. So, mammoths, dinosaurs, and whatever came before them billions of years ago drank and swam in the same water we see today. Not to mention what else they did in the water. Unfortunately, the water doesn't keep information about those ancient creatures for us to find out more about them. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. Are you willing to bet on that? Myth or fact? If you aren't, good for you. Lightning may strike the very same spot as many times as it wants. It might seem random, but the electrical discharge from the sky is pulled toward the tallest objects in the thunderstorm area. Also, the material this object is made of matters too. It's by no chance that lightning rods on buildings are mostly made of copper and aluminum alloys. These metals are some of the most conductive materials, so they pull lightning very efficiently. All deserts are hot. Now, this one's easy, right? Myth or fact? If you guessed it's a myth, then right you are. Deserts are qualified not for their temperature, but for the presence or absence of growth and life in them. The most well-known desert is the Sahara, of course, and it is indeed very hot. The actual largest desert in the world is Antarctica, which is almost twice the size of the Sahara Desert. And you wouldn't call it even lukewarm. It's a polar desert, and there are several others on our planet. For example, Greenland. There's enough gold underground to cover the entire planet in a thick layer. Would you believe that? Well, you should, because it's true. Since 1950, humanity has mined nearly 200,000 tons of gold. If we made a cube out of all this metal, it would be 70 feet high and wide. Recent data from scientists confirm that there are huge reserves of gold in the Earth's core. The metal is enough to cover the whole planet, and people might have gold up to their knees. The problem is, we just can't mine it from there. Hey, I don't mine if you don't. The Moon and Mars are better mapped than the Earth's oceans. Now, this can't be true, can it? Actually, it can. We have a detailed map of the Moon and Mars, although we're still discovering surprises on their surfaces, granted. Still, over 80% of the Earth's oceans are unmapped and unexplored. We can't study the oceans properly because of pressure, cold, and lack of light underneath billions of tons of water. The lava is always red. What other color can it be, right? Myth or fact? Myth. Usually lava is really red or orange because it's basically molten rock from the deep bowels of our planet. But there's one volcano in Indonesia whose lava is blue and luminescent. Only at night though. During the day, it looks normal. No mystery about it, just tons of sulfuric gas. This volcano also has the largest acidic crater lake in the world. The water there is so turquoise, you want to jump in immediately, but you probably guessed you should never do that. The fire on that volcano is also blue, the largest blue fire in the world, rising up to 16 feet high. Ever seen a gas stove burning? Here, the principle is basically the same. You can see a rainbow at night, too. Is it myth or a fact? It's true, and there's even a name for this phenomenon, a moonbow. Also called a lunar rainbow, this event occurs extremely rarely. It's similar to a regular rainbow, except when it appears on a clear moony night after a rain shower. There's a thing called a fire rainbow, myth or fact. You bet! It's a beautiful phenomenon when the clouds in the sky are painted all the colors of the rainbow, looking like a fiery, multicolored cascade. It only occurs when the conditions are right, and those are very specific. It's close to the equator, the weather is clear, there are feather-like clouds in the sky, the sun is higher than 58 degrees above the horizon. Such clouds are made of ice crystals. When the sun's rays hit them, the particles refract the light and create a rainbow. Wow! There are rainbow trees, myth or fact. If I made you doubt this, I'm glad, because this one is not photoshopped. This is the rainbow eucalyptus, and their bark may literally have all the rainbow colors. These eucalyptuses shed their bark at different times each year. Every time the old section goes off, the tree first reveals bright green bark that was hiding underneath, and then it may turn any color. There's a whole set of hues: orange, maroon, blue, even purple. Stones can move on their own. Myth or fact? Well, you'd be right to believe me. There's a desert plain in California where rocks move around of their own will. Once this plain used to be the bottom of a lake, but then it dried out and became an arid wasteland. Sometimes rains fall here, flooding the entire valley. When night comes, the temperature drops and the water is covered with a thin layer of ice. When it gets warmer again, the ice breaks into segments and the wind pushes them around the place. Some of these ice shards take small rocks with them. When the ice melts for good and the water evaporates, the only thing that remains are trails left by the rocks, as if they'd moved on their own. Mud puddles can move around. Myth or fact? In fact, a single mud puddle in the world also travels as it wants, and nobody still knows why. It moves at a pace of about 20 feet per year, and it seems to have started its journey near the San Andreas Fault in California. People have tried to stop its march, but couldn't. So far, this creeping natural disaster isn't showing any signs of stopping on its own either. So, there's your pesky, problematic puddle to ponder. The moon, our little companion, our only friend in the big, dark, cold space. It's not surprising that any events related to it, like solar or lunar eclipses, excites us. But how about the black moon, the blue moon, a supermoon? Have you ever heard of them? Well, let me tell you about it and how you can observe them. Let's get your calendars ready. The distance between the Earth and the Moon is 238,900 miles, I've measured. Feels not so far, doesn't it? But trust me, most people greatly underestimate this difference. Did you know that every planet in the solar system, including Jupiter and Saturn, would fit between the Moon and us? Yeah, I couldn't believe it myself. The Moon is tidally locked to the Earth. That's why it's always turned to us with only one side. There are a few phases in a lunar cycle. The new moon is the first phase. The sun illuminates the unseen side of our satellite, so we can't see the moon. It's almost invisible in the sky. The rising moon is the gradual growth of the light part. The full moon is the phase during which the sun completely illuminates the visible side. The descending moon is a gradual waning of the light part. And finally, another new moon, and the whole cycle starts again. There are 29.5 days in a lunar cycle, so it takes around a month if we're not talking about February. But why am I telling you all this? So you can better understand Black Moon, a rare astronomical event that happens once every 29 months or 2.5 years. This term doesn't exist in astronomy, as it was made up by astrologers. It's unofficial and has several meanings. Black moon may mean the second new moon in a month. Usually there's only one new moon per month, so having two is a rare phenomenon. It's caused by a slight discrepancy between the lunar cycle and the Earth's annual one, something like leap years. Black moon can also mean something else. For example, usually there are only 3 new moons per one season. Basically, one new moon every 30 days. However, if there are 4, the black moon means the third one. There are also some less popular meanings. For example, that's what people call February without a new or full moon. This happens about once every 19 years. But what's so special about it? The satellite is wholly hidden in the sky during a regular new moon. But during a black moon, you'll be able to see its dark silhouette. You'll have to choose a good place without city lights. If you live in a big city, you'll hardly be able to see it without a telescope. Also, since the sky turns black during this phenomenon, you'll be able to see different constellations that were hidden before, as well as Jupiter and Venus. The last time this happened was on April 30th, 2022. You could observe it in most parts of the United States, except for areas in the Pacific, Alaska, or Hawaiian time. Aloha! Yeah, unfortunately, if this is the first time you hear about the black moon, you've already missed it. Now you'll have to wait another 2.5 years. The next black moon will happen in September 2024 by standard definition and May 19, 2023 by seasonal definition. But hey, don't worry. You can always see another astronomical event once upon a blue moon. Now, I'm not mocking you, I'm being serious. You can still see the blue moon. Well, not literally, of course. The moon won't turn blue. That's just what astrologers call the second full moon in a month. The black and blue moons are similar by definition, but they're actually the opposites. If the black moon is a rare second new moon in a month, The blue moon is a rare second full moon. They also both happen every 29 months. Not so rare, right? Kind of ironic that this event was called the blue moon. Folklorist Philip Hitchcock assumed that the calendrical meaning of the term blue moon was first invented by the Maine Farmer's Almanac in 1937. Now, another interesting astronomical event is called the supermoon. Stock up on telescopes and look for some hills, because you'll see an exceptionally bright and large moon, like the one we only see in movies. What exactly does a supermoon mean? You see, the moon doesn't revolve around the Earth in a circular orbit. Its orbit is elliptical, and the place where it's closest to the Earth is called perigee. A supermoon is a phenomenon that occurs when the full moon coincides with the perigee. Because of this, it seems to us especially large and bright. It looks 14% larger in diameter and 30% brighter than usual. By the way, this phenomenon is often confused with the so-called moon illusion. During the moon illusion, the moon is low above the horizon and visually appears larger in size. Of the 12 or 13 full moons in a year, 3 or 4 are supermoons, but most of them are not very significant. You probably won't see a difference at all. The most interesting ones are the rare large supermoons. During them, the moon actually becomes big. The last major supermoon occurred in 2016. Unfortunately, large-scale supermoons are rare and occur about once every 18 years. The next one will happen only in 2034, but we can observe smaller supermoons quite often. In 2022, they'll take place on June 14th and July 16th. There is also an opposite phenomenon called the micromoon. You've probably already guessed what that means. It happens when the full moon is at its farthest point from the Earth. This point is called apogee. The next micromoon in 2022 will take place on June 29th. In 2023, we'll be able to observe it on January 7th, February 5th, and August 16th. Of course, you don't have to follow each of these events. Most people are more interested in lunar and solar eclipses. By the way, are you one of the people who confuses these two events with each other? Test yourself. Pause this video, describe what these two eclipses mean. Let's compare your answer with the correct definition. Are you back? Okay. So, a solar eclipse is a phenomenon where the moon entirely or partially covers the sun. A solar eclipse is possible only during the new moon when the moon itself is not visible. Many people believe that this event is incredibly rare, but this is not quite true. A lunar eclipse is a phenomenon in which the moon is entirely or partially in the shadow cast by the Earth. The lunar eclipse can only happen during the full moon when the proximity of the moon is on the node of its orbit. If you guess right, well done. If not, hey, don't worry, many people confuse them. In 2022, a partial solar eclipse will occur on October 25th. It'll be visible in Europe, South and West Asia, North and East Africa, and the Atlantic. As I mentioned, a total solar eclipse is not as rare as many people think, but the problem is that it's not always visible from any part of the planet. So, if you want to see this event, be sure to look for their calendar and see from which parts of the Earth you'll be able to see it. And don't forget the special glasses. Lunar eclipses occur much more often, though. Partial lunar eclipses happen almost every month. But the total lunar eclipse in 2022 will take place on the night of November 7th to 8th. You'll be able to see it in almost all parts of the world except Africa. I hear that the zebras are not happy about this. The moon is a genuinely fascinating satellite. You think whatever, it's just a small rock ball. But in reality, there are so many interesting things connected to it. What rare lunar events have you seen or want to see in your life? Have you observed any rare and interesting astronomical events? Be sure to share in the comments.
You feel some rumbling from below. No, it's not your tummy. It's low and ominous. You look up and see strange lights hanging above the ground. They look like shimmering balls of light hovering high up in the sky. Your throat goes dry and you gulp. That's what they call the earthquake lights. This phenomenon is poorly understood, but witnesses say they've seen it in different shapes and sizes. It could be in the form of light balls, sheet lightning, streamers, and a steady glow in the sky. Soon after, a strong earthquake follows. Scientists can't explain why those lights appear, and they don't always do either. Some believe that's a reaction of underground gases released into the atmosphere. Sure enough, an earthquake begins. But lucky you, it's not as strong as you expected. The ground is shaking, but you even manage to keep your balance. It stops as abruptly as it began, and you walk home. On the way home, you see a flash and hear a whip crack. Lightning has struck a lone tree near where you just stood. It's caught on fire, and there's a column of flames rising to the sky. Still no rain, and the pillar becomes taller and taller. Have you heard of such a thing as a fire tornado? These phenomena occur when the wind is caught in a circle close to the ground because of the difference in air pressure. Such mini tornadoes are usually easy to notice. Small rubble, dust, sand, and leaves rise into the air and start flying in rapid circles. But then, if there's a source of fire nearby, the funnel can catch it and blow it stronger, like bellows. The flames go round and round, reaching ever higher and eventually creating a swirling, blazing tower. Luckily, fire tornadoes are short-lived and don't normally cause much damage. But don't try to hide from the storm under that tree. You can find this unusual plant in Florida and in some parts of the Caribbean coast. Externally, it doesn't look special at all. A gray trunk, green leaves, and fruit similar to small apples. What you must remember is never to pluck these apples and never stand next to the tree, especially if it's raining. This is the Manchineel tree, which is considered the most dangerous in the world. Its trunk, bark, branches, and fruit contain poisonous juice. One drop of this corrosive acidic liquid can harm your skin a lot. The tree can secrete this juice, and if you accidentally touch it, you risk burning your hand. When it rains, water droplets fall on the tree and mix with the poison. Water can also bounce off the bark and get on your skin. That's why you shouldn't stand nearby either. There are almost no other shrubs or mushrooms growing around. Animals avoid these trees, and people don't chop them and don't pluck the fruit. You can't make a bonfire from their branches. Burning wood emits poisonous smoke that can damage your eyes. Locals know this tree well, but tourists and travelers might accidentally get harmed. That's why most Manchineel trees are marked with paint or have a warning sign. In western Venezuela, locals living close to the Catatumbo River aren't afraid of lightning because they see it almost every single night. It starts at around 7 o'clock and doesn't stop until dawn. The everlasting Catatumbo lightning did once stop for a few months, from January to March 2010. It was probably due to drought, or maybe the charge ran out. In 1991, a scientist suggested that the phenomenon happens because of cold and warm air currents meeting in the area. Another theory is that the lightning could be due to the presence of uranium in the bedrock. Not all lightning happens inside clouds. There's a rare phenomenon called a dirty thunderstorm. The lightning happens above a volcano. The most famous is in Japan. It erupts almost every day and spits black clouds high into the air. So it's super scary volcano clouds plus lightning. Whoa! Regular lightning happens during a storm when ice crystals bump into each other. In a dirty thunderstorm, bits of volcanic ash collide, create friction, and spark up the sky. In the hottest and one of the driest places on Earth, Africa's Danakil Desert, temperatures often rise above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The out-of-this-world landscape has many active volcanoes and geysers that spit out toxic gases like chlorine and sulfur. The vibrantly green, electric blue, and yellow waters are all rain and seawater warmed up by magma. One wrong step here, and you'd be gone for good. This happened in June 2009. People in certain areas in Japan left their homes after a heavy downpour, only to find fish, frogs, and tadpoles everywhere. Fields, roads, lawns, and rooftops were littered with these aquatic creatures. One man was shocked to see 13 carp on and around his truck. Apparently, he stopped to count them. No one knows for sure where the bizarre rain came from, but the most popular theory claims that a powerful water spout picked up all these creatures. Then it carried them through the upper atmosphere and dropped the animals on the unsuspecting people below. And now, welcome to Abraham Lake in Canada. It's completely frozen. You step onto the transparent ice and look down at what lies beneath. No fish, just some mysterious frozen bubbles. They look like small clouds frozen in ice, or jellyfish who forgot to pack a winter jacket. There are thousands of these little bubbles made up of methane. But don't try to dig a hole in the ice to touch it. Methane is highly flammable. It's created by methane-producing bacteria that eats leaves, grass, insects, or any other organic stuff that gets into the lake. When the methane touches the frozen water, it turns into tens of thousands of frozen little balls. When the ice melts, they burst open and sizzle. Similar lakes can be found near some shores of the Arctic Ocean. There, the size of the bubbles can reach several times the size of hot air balloons. Beautiful for sure, but not exactly safe. The next shocking lake is in Indonesia, the island of Java. You come to a majestic volcano, overgrown with grass and trees. The volcano seems to be asleep, but smoke is pouring out of it. You climb to the summit. Exhausted, tired, sweaty, you're ready to cool off. Nice work, you made it to the top. You look into the mouth of the volcano. No boiling lava, just a beautiful, bright, turquoise lake down there. It looks like an oasis. Perfect time for a refreshing dip. You run down and get ready to jump in. But that's not water, that's acid! Sulfurous gases get into the lake from under the volcano. The lake itself is full of metals. When the gases touch them, they form that beautiful turquoise water. Acid. Better head back to the nearest village, rest, and come back at night when it's cooler. In the dark, the lake seems to glow. Right above it, you see light-filled, exploding little clouds. The sulfurous gases rise out of the lake, combine with the air, and flash bright blue. Still, don't get too close. The sea turns sinister red, and no living being can survive in it. Must be some dark magic. In fact, it's tiny algae that spread uncontrollably, giving the water this specific tint called the red tide. They have toxins that destroy sea mammals, birds, and turtles, as well as creatures that feed on them. For humans, contact with it ends in breathing problems or seafood poisoning. Sometimes even huge ships sink in the open seas for no visible reason. That reason is often the pockets of bubbles that underwater volcanoes produce even while they're sleeping. Those productive magma factories are hidden under 8,500 feet of water. When they wake up, they act just like land volcanoes, and they can cause destructive tsunamis. This tree looks like a bottle. No wonder it's called the bottle tree. It grows in Namibia and attracts many tourists. But don't get too close to the tree because it's one of the most dangerous on Earth. Milky juice flows inside the trunk. It's highly toxic to the human body. On the bright side though, the trees have beautiful pink-white leaves with a red core. There's a tree growing in Western Australia that was once used as a prison. A cell for criminals existed inside the Boab prison tree for a long time. People were usually kept there temporarily, just for one night. After that, they were taken to their final destination. The prison was built more than 1,500 years ago and has been perfectly preserved to this day. Tourists visiting this place can sneak a peek inside.
So in Westbrook, Maine, people saw an enormous ice disk in January 2019. This disk was like a wintry carousel. It was spinning away in the Penobscot River. Residents called it everything from an icy lazy Susan to a frozen spinning wheel. It was estimated to be around 300 feet wide, which made it one of the biggest ice disks ever seen. Weirdly, the spinning ice disk notion isn't new. They've shown up in places like Russia and Washington before. They were almost always a perfect circle. So why do they happen? Well, some scientists in 1997 thought it was because river water created a whirlpool effect around a chunk of ice, smoothing it out to be perfectly circular. Yet, in 2016, other scientists claimed that river currents helped these disks get started, but temperature changes kept them twirling. Warmer water makes the ice melt and sink, creating a vortex that keeps the disk spinning. The warmer the water, the faster it spins. Ever heard of the Hestilin lights of Norway? They aren't the same as northern lights. Think of these lights as glowing balls. They have been seen since at least the 1930s. These luminous wonders show up in all sorts of colors and shapes. Sometimes they flicker, and other times they just chill in the air. The Hessdalen lights can show up 10 to 20 times a week. They appear both during the day and at night. They can last for just a few seconds or hover for over an hour. Interestingly, nobody has a clue about what exactly they are. The efforts to understand these lights include Project Hessdalen, started in 1983, and later projects like the Triangle Project. Despite ongoing research, there's no consensus on the origin of the lights. Some suggested explanations include misperception of celestial bodies, aircraft, or mirages. One theory ties the lights to airborne dust from mining, while another mentions plasma formed by ionized air and dust during radon decay. Okay. Ringing rocks is a cool geological thing you probably didn't know about, and it's our next stop on the Mysterious Natural Phenomena Tour. You can find them in Bucks County in the U.S. If you give these rocks a hit with a hammer or another rock, they start ringing. Scientists have been studying them, but the mystery remains. There are different hypotheses about this one too. Things like the size and shape of the boulders and how they're stacked can affect the sounds they make. But that alone doesn't give them the ability to ring. Even though the sound is often described as metallic, it's likely because of the rock's density and internal stress, not just its iron content. A scientific experiment from the 1960s suggested that the ringing ability came from some internal stress, not external weathering. The live rocks found in the middle of boulder fields showed expansion or relaxation after being cut, indicating internal elastic stresses. A slow weathering rate in dry fields could cause these stresses. The relic stress theory suggests that these boulders act like guitar strings. A de-stressed boulder gives a dull thud, but a stressed one resonates at different frequencies. The boulders can still ring when removed from their fields, leading to myths about stealing them. Most fields are now cleared of smaller ringers, and breaking large boulders stops the ringing. Large equipment is needed to move the remaining small ringers, weighing over a ton. Now let's talk about the Naga fireballs. They only show up along the Mekong River in Asia. These picky fireballs hang out in just a 155-mile stretch of the river. The reddish glowing balls rise naturally from the water into the air. Their scope ranges from small particles to the size of a basketball. The reported number of fireballs varies from tens to thousands per night. They can be spotted all year round, but they seem to go wild during the full moon in late autumn. Why? Well, that's just another one of their little mysteries. Some have tried to explain the phenomenon scientifically. One theory suggests that flammable phosphine gas from the marshy environment could be the cause. However, skeptics argue that spontaneous ignition isn't likely to be the reason. Another scientific explanation involves free-floating plasma orbs created when surface electricity is discharged into a solution. Still, these typically occur in controlled settings during experiments, and not naturally. We can carry on with ball lightning. It's a super rare thing, a glowing ball that shows up in the air. It likes to make an appearance close to the ground during thunderstorms, hanging out with regular lightning. It can be red, orange, yellow, white, or blue, and it's often accompanied by a hissing sound and a funky smell. This flashy sphere of light is a quick show. It lasts just a few seconds, zooming around, and then poof, it's gone, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a little pop. Ball lightning might seem like a troublemaker, but it's usually harmless. Sure, it's been known to burn or melt stuff on occasion, but it's not out to get us. Scientists aren't entirely sure why it happens or how it's related to regular lightning. People have been tossing around ideas like weird air or gas behavior, high-density plasma stuff, or even a vortex of glowing gases. Even microwave radiation trapped in a plasma bubble is on the list. But don't get it confused with bead lightning. That's a different one, more like a string of beads. And it happens when a bolt of lightning sticks around for a good chunk of a second. Shh! We're now at the Mapini Silent Zone. It's this spot near this place in Mexico. The story goes that in this desert patch, you can't pick up any radio signals or talk to anyone. In July 1970, a rocket from Utah went off course and landed here. It was carrying some sort of cobalt. Authorities had to haul away tons of soil from the crash site. Now, thanks to the cleanup, the silent zone is wrapped up in myths. People talk about weird magnetic stuff messing with radios and about plants and critters going through mutations. Well, locals go with it, boosting tourism in the region. Alright, we can now talk a bit about the sun. Well, it's not just a big ball of fire. It's got an outer layer called the corona. Think of it as an invisible sun jacket made of gases. You usually can't see it because the sun is super bright. But there's a trick. During a total solar eclipse, when the moon slides between us and the sun, the corona shows up, all glowing and white. The corona is scorching hot, even hotter than the sun's surface, which is kinda weird. Scientists are on a mission to crack this heat mystery. They found something called heat bombs shooting from the sun into the corona, exploding and warming things up even more. But that might be just one piece of the puzzle. You see, the sun's surface is like a playground covered in magnetic fields. These magnetic fields create cool shapes on the sun, like loops and streamers. Special telescopes help us see these cool patterns up close. The corona stretches way out into space, and from there, it sends out the solar wind that moves through our solar system. Its particles are so speedy that they escape the sun's gravity. So, there's this cool spot called Kuala Sangalore Beach that you can only check out when the tide is low. The timing changes every day, and you can't get there when the tide is high. Most of the time, it's hiding under the sea, not even on the map. But when the tide's just right, bam, it pops up. Kind of like Malaysia's own version of Salar de Uyuni. People call it the mirror of the sky, because when it's not underwater, it turns into a giant reflection of the sky. An awesome spot for cool Instapics. Besides being a sweet travel spot, it's also home to a bunch of marine life, like sea and baby clams that live all over the sandy shores. Rocks rolling down the slopes of a rumbling volcano, pushing other bigger rocks on their way, and eventually tumbling down into the ocean in a humongous cascade, causing a wave the height of which the world's never seen before. This is what might happen if the Helena slump of the Hawaiian Big Island falls off into the water. The Kilauea volcano is far from dormant. The latest eruption occurred in 2018. Its eruptions are usually accompanied by earthquakes of different magnitudes, and with each quake, the magma rocks on the slopes of the volcano shift down. These rock formations are called slumps, and the Helena slump is the most notorious of them all. In 1868, the shift of this slump caused a tidal wave rising as tall as 60 feet. But what's most troubling is that some 110,000 years ago, a landslide here led to one of the most powerful earthquakes ever, which in turn led to a mega tsunami of over 1,000 feet in height. Scientists are worried that such an event may repeat in the future. If that happens, the wave might engulf the whole of Hawaii and easily reach both North and South American coasts. Geologists are quick to reassure, though, that a landslide like this is unlikely to occur anytime soon. It's just too early for that. But when it finally does, the consequences will be catastrophic. Have a nice day! Yellowstone National Park in the western USA is world famous for its dazzling views, and especially the colorful Grand Prismatic Spring at its very heart. But we should all stay aware that Yellowstone is, first and foremost, an enormous caldera, basically a slumbering supervolcano. The difference between a regular volcano, like Kilauea from earlier, and a supervolcano is that the latter is thousands of times more powerful. Imagine an eruption spewing tons of huge rock and rivers of hot lava, pumping out clouds of ash that make countries stop air travel for weeks. And now multiply all of this by 1,000. This is what a Yellowstone eruption would look like. At first, a huge area in the middle of the national park would shake, crumble, and then blast upwards in a megaton explosion. Lava flows and magma rocks would cover the area of about 40 square miles, roughly half of Washington, D.C. But the greatest danger is the volcanic ash. The ashen plume would rise miles above and get carried by the wind in every direction. Since the eruption would be far from ordinary, the spread and damage would also be much greater than usual. The ash is thick and heavy, so it would cover a vast area in a blanket, destroying crops and even buildings. Worse still, it would spread in the air and block out the sun, leading to a drastic drop in temperature and an artificial winter. Even regular volcanoes can lower temperatures worldwide by a few degrees. A supervolcano may potentially cause a new ice age. Luckily, the chances of Yellowstone supervolcano erupting in the near future, or at all, are extremely low. There have been only 3 of those in the history of Earth, and there's no evidence such a disaster should repeat. Scientists estimate the probability at 0.00014%, which is lower than the chances of an asteroid wiping us all out. Speaking of which, if dinosaurs could talk, and were at least still alive for that matter, they'd tell you that asteroid threat is as real as it gets. Scientists at NASA say they've tracked 90% of all near-Earth asteroids of significant size, and none of them are a matter of any concern. But there are still the other 10% in the great unknown. What's more, asteroids can change their line of flight because of the pull of other celestial bodies and eventually turn our way. Lucky us. Now, if an asteroid big enough, like a mile across, hits the Earth, it will first cause an explosion powerful enough to erase a dozen big cities in a matter of seconds. Then the impact will raise a cloud of dust and debris that will block out the sun, just like the ash cloud from a volcano, and cause a centuries-long winter on the whole planet. But even if it falls into the ocean, which is more likely, a resulting wave will rise several miles high, washing coastal cities off the face of the planet. But at least there won't be a new ice age. Although scientists are pretty sure there's no such threat in the near future, it can't be ruled out completely, and humanity needs at least 5 years to prepare for this event. If a big near-Earth asteroid suddenly changes its course and turns right toward our planet, we won't stand a chance against it. Disaster movie, anyone? A much more probable calamity, though, rests right beneath our feet. It's the San Andreas Fault in California. The fault has been ready for rupture for years now, and scientists estimate that an earthquake along this line is likely to occur in the next 3 decades. And when it happens, it won't be nice. They expect a magnitude of 8.0, which is comparable to some of the most devastating quakes in history. It's all the more dangerous since California is home to some of the most populated cities in the western U.S., including Los Angeles and San Francisco. High-rise buildings are common there, and they're particularly vulnerable against underground shakes. The San Andreas earthquake might cause a whole lot of damage both to cities and countryside. In the worst-case scenario, the ground might break apart, destroying buildings, farms, and changing the landscape altogether. Still, scientists believe that the probability of such a quake is only 7% for the next 30 years. So there's a rather big chance, 93%, that we'll never see that in our lifetime. Yet, there's another earthquake hazard not so far away from the previous one: the megathrust in Chile. The country sits right above the subduction zone, an area where 2 tectonic plates meet and go one beneath the other. At the place of their meeting, stress has accumulated because of their continuous movement, and once that strain is too much, a major earthquake occurs. Chile has experienced a lot of quakes in the recent years, and scientists are worried those might be preparing the area for a really big one. They believe a great earthquake is due to happen before the end of the century, and it might be devastating to the coastal area. Even smaller quakes caused tsunamis that flooded the west coast, and a huge one like that is likely to raise a wave of incredible height. On the bright side, Chile now knows to prepare in advance for the coming natural disasters, and geologists are pretty sure people will be able to evacuate before the earthquake strikes. In September of 1859, astronomer Richard Carrington was looking at the sun and suddenly saw a bright flare on its surface. He made a note of it in his records, but only realized how important it was a couple of days later. The energy from that flare reached Earth and struck it directly, causing northern lights to appear above Cuba and burning telegraph lines all around the world. This was dubbed the Carrington event, and it was a solar storm. Such storms hit the Earth fairly often, but none of them were so powerful as the Carrington event, neither before nor after. But in 2012, astronomers registered a similar solar flare whose energy nearly hit our planet once again. If it had been just a week earlier, we'd have been in big trouble. Today, humanity relies on electricity in almost every aspect of life, and a powerful solar storm would mess with the electromagnetic field of Earth a lot. All electric appliances would either shut down or short-circuit, and huge transformers powering basically everything would go out of order for good. It would take years to repair them, and the cost of such a massive blackout would count in trillions of dollars. The worst of it is that science is almost unable to predict solar storms, and even if we could know about them in advance, we'd be powerless to stop them. The flare happens in a matter of seconds, and it takes about 8 minutes for the particles to reach the Earth's atmosphere, causing the disturbance. The power outage would come a bit later, in a day or so, when a massive cloud of plasma gets to our planet. At the moment, there's no protection against solar flares, and the chances of one powerful enough to cut all of our electricity in the next few years are quite high, about 12%. The only good thing about all this is that we now know of such a possibility and can at least prepare in advance. Hey, don't forget to pack some underwear and socks. You'll always need those.
You're on a ship when you notice some water foaming nearby. It looks as if a huge vessel just sunk there, but you don't see any debris. Steam is rising over the water, and large bubbles appear on the surface. In a couple of minutes, you see a small piece of land appear right in front of your eyes. It's releasing flames and lava. Millions of gallons of water evaporate in the mouth of the volcano. Frightened, you get away from this place. For the next 3 years, the small island covered with volcanoes will slowly be emerging from the water. Every day, it'll erupt and fill the sky with black ash. When the ash settles, it'll get mixed with the water and form the shore. This eruption lasted 3 years, and finally, by 1967, the island of Surtsey on the southern coast of Iceland was fully formed. Surtsey is one of the few islands that have emerged from the depths to the surface of the sea. But it's almost impossible to get here. The island has a unique ecological system, and scientists want to find out how it's going to develop without human influence. Only a few people from all over the world have permission to walk around on the island. For many decades, people's minds have been occupied with the mystery of Easter Island, a remote piece of volcanic soil far away in the Pacific Ocean. But our planet hosts thousands of such lonely islands. What is so peculiar about this one? The mystery is concealed not in the island itself, but giant stone statues covering it. Who created the world-famous huge stone heads? Did they serve any specific purpose? Rapa Nui, which is the name given to Easter Island by its first inhabitants, is the territory of Chile and is situated in the southern Pacific Ocean. And it is so far away that you can easily consider it one of the most distant places on the world map. The only transport that can take you there is a plane. If you want to get to this destination point, you will need to spend 5 hours on board, flying from Santiago to Easter Island. The statues carry the name Moai. They started to be carved at some point between the 13th and 15th centuries. Rapa Nui statues are easily recognized thanks to their peculiar faces. They have long noses, wide chins, rectangular ears, heavy brows, and deeply set eyes. It is quite curious that the nostrils curl in the way fish hooks do. Firstly, people thought that the statues were made up only by their heads. But surprisingly, it turned out that there are full bodies that are attached to the heads. It was discovered during excavations in May 2012. The bodies were just hidden underground. Still, the heads of the statues, visible from the first site, make up 3/8 of each statue's size. As for the arms, they were carved against the bodies, resting in different positions. Most statues, 834 out of 887, were carved from the material called tuff, which is, in fact, compressed volcanic ash. Curiously, all the statues except one faced inland. It means their backs are turned to the ocean. Perhaps the reason for that was the belief that the statues were the protectors of the villagers. That's why they overlooked the settlement. The only statues not fitting into this pattern can be found at Ahu Akivi, a sacred place for the people of Rapa Nui. People keep wondering how the statues of such a huge weight have been distributed all around the island. What's more, in 1722, visitors found a small local population between 1,500 and 3,000 people. How could it correlate with the hundreds of statues on the island? The mystery surrounding the way Rapa Nui people could move the statues challenged the researchers, not letting them back off. In the 1980s, some of them decided to recreate a statue and check the possibility of moving it around. Several decades passed, and another group of American scientists proved that the islanders could tie ropes encircling the huge statues and move them with a walking motion. They backed up their theory with practice, moving a full-size replica using this method. Actually, their idea can explain why Rapa Nui folklore states that the statues were walking with the help of magic. It explains the way the statues were transported to their designated places. Our next stop is Brazil, far from the center of Sao Paulo. That's where you can find an island that's almost impossible to get to, but if you succeed, you're unlikely to leave it. It's called Snake Island. There's no other place on the planet with such a high concentration of snakes. They are the only owners of the island, since no other animals can survive among them. The golden lancehead. They are one of the most venomous species in the world. Their venom is very powerful and fast-acting. If you let this reptile bite a raw piece of meat, the place around the bite will start to melt. Count me out. Imagine you're on this island and the snakes don't bite you. The most interesting thing you can find there is an old lighthouse. It's hidden in the dense foliage of trees. People lived on the island a long time ago. Rumor has it that the last keepers were in the lighthouse when the snakes broke in. No one has lived there ever since. How these unique snakes appeared on the island is still a mystery. The most popular legend claims that a pirate came there a long time ago. He hid a treasure somewhere on the island. Then, he left the snakes in the spot where the chest was hidden. The pirate hoped the reptiles would scare people away from his gold coins and jewelry. Since then, a few snakes have managed to increase their population thousands of times. And some of them, reportedly, are wearing jewelry. No, not really. Even if you wanted to get to the island for some reason, the patrol services would stop you. Only a few people in special protective suits can get there to conduct scientific research. Susie gets here on a small boat. As soon as she steps on the ground, she turns on the live broadcast on her phone. She records dolls hanging on trees all over the island. They have different clothes, different sizes, and faces. There are about a dozen creepy toys on every tree. Rain and hot sun deform the toys' faces. They are covered with moss and greenery and have taken eerily scary forms. There are rumors they come to life at night. Wanna check? One of the subscribers writes, "No problem," Susie agrees. The sun is going down below the horizon. Darkness falls on the forest. Susie is wandering among the trees. The moon lights her way. She makes a fire to get warm. At this moment, she hears a strange sound. She notices some movement out of the corner of her eye. The phone turns off. Susie looks up and sees one of the dolls, lit up by the flames, is turning its head in her direction. Susie screams and runs away from this place. Of course, the doll didn't move. You can notice a little bird sitting behind the toy's head. A few days later, Susie found out that one of the Mexico City locals had moved to the island in the 50s and filled it with toys. He collected dolls from landfills and canals around the island. He spent several days decorating every tree. In the beginning, it looked strange and exciting for tourists. Then, as the dolls began to age and rot, this place became more attractive for people. There are several legends about the reasons for his obsession. Okay, Susie's had enough of these mysteries and creepy places. Now she wants to admire something majestic that was created by nature. She arrives in California's Sequoia National Park, where the most giant trees in the world grow. She's looking with an open mouth at the biggest tree in the world, a giant sequoia. Its name is General Sherman, and it's about 2,000 years old. The volume of this tree is almost half the size of an Olympic swimming pool. Despite its age, it's not the oldest one. There are redwoods in the park that appeared 3,000 years ago. And the tallest tree in the world grows here, in California. It's a redwood that belongs to the sequoia family. It's called Hyperion. This is 1/3 of the Eiffel Tower's height. Just imagine what kind of view you can see from the tree's top. Now Susie is on the island of Madagascar. She's going to see unique baobab trees. They look like something has ripped them out of the ground, turned them upside down, and shoved them back in. Baobabs are some of the most beautiful trees in the world. Most of them are here in the Alley of Baobabs, but you can also find them in Australia and South Africa. Their tree trunks resemble sponges. They expand and absorb moisture during the rainy season. Elephants like to drink it. They tear off and chew the trunk's parts to quench their thirst. At night, flowers bloom on the baobabs. They smell like sour milk and attract bats. But the most interesting thing is that the baobab doesn't dry out and doesn't fall like other trees after the end of its life. It crumbles, settles, and leaves a pile of pieces on the ground. Back in the day, from 774 to 775, Earth got hit with a mega blast of radiation. This crazy burst of energy left its mark. 3 rings from that year show way too high levels of radioactive stuff. But what exactly caused it? Scientists are inclined to think that the reason was a solar flare. Some folks think maybe a massive supernova caused the radiation blast. But astronomer Phil Plait says that if that had been the case, it would have had to be less than 1,000 light years away and would have been crazy bright. But there's no record of that happening. No bright, shiny Death Star in sight. After looking at the radioactive carbon and beryllium in tree rings, scientists ruled out a bunch of other possibilities. At first, they considered that it was a smash-up between neutron stars or a neutron star and a black hole. These types of crashes produce a super quick blast of gamma rays without any light show, which lines up best with the evidence. But these kinds of collisions are super rare. Plait thinks it's kinda unlikely that this is the answer. He figures we should only see one of these events in our galaxy about once every million years. So having one just 1,200 years ago seems pretty wild. Scientists are seriously worried about these rare events. If one happened closer to Earth, it could seriously mess up life on our planet. Even if it was thousands of light years away, a similar event today could cause chaos with all the fancy electronic systems we've come to rely on. So it's a good thing those gamma ray bursts are so rare, because if they were more common, Earth might be in for a rough ride. You may think that if our planet could withstand mega radiation blasts, it can easily withstand something less frightening. Let's say grasshoppers. Sorry to say that, but it's not exactly true. Back in 1874, during a hot summer in Kansas, things took a strange turn. Grasshoppers, or should I say locusts, invaded the Great Plains like nobody's business. They came down like a storm, blanketing houses, trees, and even poor trains passing by. These bugs were on a mission to cause chaos. Farmers had to scramble to protect their wells and just about anything else worth saving. Locusts landed everywhere, wreaking havoc on everything in sight. Even poor sheep lost their wool. Locusts even stripped paint off wagons and handles off pitchforks. This is how destructive they were. Livestock tried to fight back by eating them, but there were just too many of these insects. That year, those critters caused about $200 million in crop damage. The locust invasion was so tough, even the US Army stepped in to help. In the end, locusts began to disappear, sparing the plains from further devastation. Natural disasters can be even more unexpected than radiation blasts from space and locust invasions. Check this out. Back in June 2017, a reindeer herder up in northwest Siberia was minding their own business when they suddenly heard a crazy loud blast and saw smoke shooting up from the ground. If that happened to me, I'd need to change my pants. Sorry. Later on, they found this huge hole that was like 23 feet wide and nearly 65 feet deep and was surrounded by chunks of ice and dirt. It turned out that there were over 17 such black holes in the area. They were filled with peaty water and shrouded in mystery. Some folks thought those were sinkholes. Others were sure they were left by top-secret device tests or even a bunch of meteorites. Now, the latest idea is that these holes are actually craters caused by the Arctic warming up and melting the frozen ground. The theory states that as the ground thaws, gas pockets trapped beneath the surface burst through, creating such dramatic holes. Apparently, these eerie craters have been showing up in specific spots in Siberia where ancient geological faults have been leaking out hot natural gas for ages. Combine that with some leftover methane from old lake sediments, and you've got a recipe for some explosive surprises as the planet heats up. Not scared yet? Alright, maybe you're afraid of darkness, huh? If so, you wouldn't like it back in 536. It's the year when the world went through a crazy 18-month period of darkness. A mysterious fog covered Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, blocking out the sun and causing chaos. It was like the Dark Ages, but for real. It turns out that the main culprit behind this fog was a volcanic eruption in Iceland. This eruption spread ash across the northern hemisphere, causing temperatures to drop and crops to fail. People were freezing and starving. It was a mess. Historians from back in the day even talked about how weird it was. The sun looked like the moon. Summers were freezing cold, and even China had summer snow. It was all because of the volcanic ash blocking out the sun. And to make things even worse, this period of darkness sparked the beginning of the bubonic plague in 541. Talk about a rough time to be alive. Let's go back to Siberia real quick. Back in 1908, way out in the wilds of Siberia, an asteroid dropped for an unexpected visit. Today, we know it as the Tunguska asteroid, but it didn't get its name instantly. Local folks only caught a glimpse of the show. A bright fireball streaking across the sky, followed by a massive boom. Trees went flying, fires blazed, and animals weren't too happy about it either. But since the area was so remote, not many folks took notice. For almost 2 decades, nobody bothered to check out the Tunguska site. People had too much on their plates back then. But then, scientists finally made it out there and found evidence of the asteroid's shenanigans. Later in expeditions, they found some spacey microparticles. Fast forward to now, and NASA has a whole planetary defense thing going on. They even sent a mission to test out asteroid deflecting tech. Because who knows when the next cosmic rock will come knocking on our door, right? In the middle of the 19th century, there was one more epic solar storm called the Carrington Event. It may not sound like a big deal to you, but it had pretty rough consequences. The next day after the storm, Earth was hit with this insane geomagnetic storm that threw telegraphs off the rails and brought auroras to the tropics. And it's the place where they normally never show up. Turns out, all this space weather madness started with weird stuff happening on the sun's surface, like sunspots. From these spots, solar flares and other crazy electromagnetic stuff can pop out and mess with our technology. Massive solar storms like this one can shoot out from the sun at speeds of up to 1,800 miles per second. They can contain billions of tons of solar material, complete with a sassy little magnetic field that loves to mess with Earth's magnetic field when they meet. Now, listen closely. We're getting close to the next solar maximum in 2025, so it's a good time to check out the history of the worst solar storms, like the Carrington Event, and take notice. Imagine if a similar storm hit today. An internet apocalypse, anyone? Businesses would be sent offline and we'd be facing some serious damages. Luckily, these mega solar storms don't happen very often. But hey, space weather is tricky to predict, so who knows when the next one will hit?
You find yourself in Africa, land of unique wildlife, home to a great variety of cultures and languages, and, first and foremost, host to the world's largest hot desert, the Sahara. It's daytime, and you are thirsty for some water and shade. You've been walking for days, trying to find one of those precious-looking oases. You feel you're near, but the horizon just keeps stretching and stretching. Your mind is tired, and your body is feeling all the heat. It's like you've eaten a full plate of hot pepper and then some more, judging by how much you're sweating. And when I say hot, think 100 degrees Fahrenheit hot, on average. No wonder this is happening. After all, you find yourself in the world's biggest hot desert. Now, I say hot desert since the biggest deserted landscapes are actually the cold ones, located in Antarctica and the Arctic. Icy Antarctica's frozen desert is more or less the size of 1 million LAXs. Yep, the Los Angeles International Airport. The Arctic desert is just a bit smaller than that. Now, in case you don't know, the Sahara Desert is located in northern Africa, stretching from the Atlantic Ocean all the way over to the Red Sea. It occupies an area large enough to place approximately 100,000 Disney World theme parks side by side. According to scientists, its boundaries are expanding. Deserts usually form in the subtropics because of what's called Hadley circulation. The air rises at the equator and descends into the subtropics. This circulation of air has a drying effect, which helps the formation of desert landscapes. Since the 1920s, the Sahara is considered to have expanded by over 10%. How is this happening? Well, let's start from the beginning. You probably know the Sahara Desert as one of the most inhospitable places on Earth today. Just FYI, for a place to be considered a desert, it has to receive less than 4 inches of rain per year. Due to the very small precipitation index, deserts are usually dry and arid places. There is little humidity in the air, and daytime temperatures can go as high as 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually, there isn't that much animal and plant life because of the lack of water. But in the Sahara's case, it wasn't always like that. It may be difficult to imagine northern Africa without the tons of sand it has today. But about 20,000 years ago, the Sahara was actually one big oasis. Recent discoveries show clear evidence of what the scientists now call the Green Sahara. In the mid-1800s, a German explorer crossing the Sahara encountered some paintings and engravings that nomad artists had left behind. What he saw in those paintings looked nothing like his actual surroundings. Instead of an arid landscape with only camels and desert vegetation, the rock paintings depicted jungle animals like giraffes and hippos. There were even images of livestock and grazing animals, such as cattle and sheep, something that seems impossible for modern-day Sahara. Artists usually draw what they see around them, so this finding really intrigued the German explorer. The drawings were so detailed that the artists must have had close contact with those animals. You can find this rock art spread out in the northern part of the African continent, from western Sahara to Saudi Arabia. Geologists soon took a keen interest in this and found the first clues to what this could mean. They have been able to confirm that, in fact, northern Africa was once much wetter. They found evidence from nearby deep-sea sediment off the coast of Mauritania. Sampled cores of underwater sand and mud, known as Saharan dust flux, show geologists that, indeed, a green Sahara was possible. The more dust is blowing off of the desert and into the bottom of the ocean, the drier the climate in the region. The sediment cores show that there was much less dust, only half as much, coming off northern Africa during the humid period. This period has to do with Earth's natural cycles. Normally, the Earth rotates at a tilt of 23.5 degrees, but this angle is not consistent and changes over time. Earth's tilt is responsible for the amount of sunlight each hemisphere receives. It affects several ecosystem functions on the planet. During the time of the Green Sahara, the Earth received between 4 and 8% more sunlight than it does today. So when the Earth tilted about 20,000 years ago, the northern hemisphere received more direct sunlight, which affected humidity levels in the region. As the northern hemisphere got warmer, this affected monsoon activity, more specifically the West African monsoon. Monsoons are wind systems that affect a region's rainfall index and humidity levels. As a part of the globe gets warmer, it allows for more air to rise. It combines with the wind to draw moisture up into the atmosphere. Little by little, northern Africa also became wetter. The increased moisture made the Sahara so wet that there were actual bodies of water in the region. As vegetation grew, the plants held onto moisture better than bare sand could. There is evidence of natural basins throughout the Sahara and lakes so big they would fit all of the U.S.'s Great Lakes inside of them. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of vibrant societies in what are now arid areas. It looks like ancient cultures were able to take full advantage of the African humid period. According to researchers, the human population peaked across the Sahara about 9,000 years ago. There are traces of fireplaces, hunting tools, fish hooks, and even mounds of fish bones. Records show that there have been over 230 green periods over the span of 8 million years. Solar radiation is always changing due to natural orbital cycles. That's why Earth will most certainly see another Green Sahara moment. It might be thousands of years from now, but it will happen. The same way the Sahara turns green, it turns yellow again. Let's put it like that. All it takes is a significant axial tilt and a few years of readjusting. However, another phenomenon is calling the attention of scientists now. Recent studies by the National Science Foundation from the University of Maryland show the Sahara has expanded 10% over the past 90 years. This phenomenon is called desertification, which literally means fertile land turning into desert land. The Sahara Desert is now advancing into the semi-arid region of Sahel. In 1950, this region was home to 31 million people. Today, its population is over 100 million people. This rapid population growth has largely contributed to the Sahara's expansion. Farmers that were once nomads began settling down. Land usage grew more intense, aiding in weakening the soil. The demand for food has caused an overcropping of the land, so even more of it is turning into the desert now. The study also shows that natural climate cycles can affect rainfall in the Sahara and the Sahel. Scientists affirm that all deserts fluctuate, not only the Sahara. A desert's boundary may expand in the dry winter and contract during the wetter summer. South of the Sahara lies the Chad Basin. It is a natural body of water that now serves as an indicator of the Sahara's expansion. The Chad Basin is located in the region where the Sahara is advancing southward. An atmospheric and ocean expert from the University of Maryland explains that rainfall has reduced greatly in the entire region. Due to reduced rainfalls, there is less water across the entire basin, and even Chad Lake is drying out. Just like the Sahara, the Atacama Desert in Chile, deemed the world's driest, is also expanding. It is located north of the city of Santiago, and its southern border is expanding toward the Chilean capital. Because the climate is getting drier and drier here, the city of Santiago risks turning into an arid or semi-arid region itself. The once fertile valleys of local rivers that lived on agriculture and livestock for many generations are losing their revenues as Chilean land is turning into a desert. Since 2010, Santiago has received only a third of its annual rainfall. Outside of the city, farmers are digging holes in search of blue gold, or simply put, water. The situation here is very similar to that of Sahel. So tell me this, were you as surprised as I was to find out what has been happening in the Sahara region? Feel free to share in the comments below. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the Bermuda Triangle mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night, when he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. No one exactly knows how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. When the TBF Avenger planes went missing, a massive search operation was conducted. Boats and planes searched the Bermuda Triangle for any signs of the aircraft. One of the boats searching was a PBM-5 Mariner airboat. The airboat took flight at 7:27 p.m. and called in a routine radio message 3 minutes later. Then, it was never heard from again. No trace was ever found of the rescue airboat or the 5 Avenger aircraft. A huge investigation was launched into the disappearance of all these vehicles, but nothing was ever discovered. The Bermuda Triangle is home to some pretty intense and unexpected weather. Storms build up quickly and unexpectedly, then disappear soon after. If you blink, you might miss it. This could explain why few distress signals are issued. Pilots and sailors never saw the weather coming. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for the many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large unexpected waves that reach up to 100 feet tall. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. Just off the coast of Japan, you'll find the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific Ocean. They call it the Devil's Triangle. Between 1950 and 1954, 9 ships disappeared in this area without leaving a trace. The ship Kaiomaru 5 was sent to investigate these unexplained disappearances when it also vanished. After this incident, the Japanese authorities labeled the area as a danger zone, and sailors were encouraged to avoid it. Some people blame all disasters on the extraterrestrial paranormal activity. Others suppose it's all about raging natural phenomena. Some scientists believe the cause of anomalies is the environmental changes. Also, there's a really high concentration of methane hydrates on the bottom of the ocean in the Pacific Bermuda area. This gas tends to set off, and when it happens, bubbles start forming on the surface of the water. These gas eruptions can interrupt the ability to float and can easily sink a ship. Because of this chemical reaction, there won't be even a trace left. Underwater volcanoes are said to be another possible explanation for the Japanese Dragon's Triangle. In fact, they can take down even small islands. Luckily, nobody lives there. It's a pretty common thing in this area that some of them disappear underwater and others appear out of the blue because of seismic activity. You'll never find the Dragon's Triangle on any official map of the world, so nobody's quite sure about how large it is in reality. In July 2015, 2 teenagers disappeared after setting sail off the coast of Florida. There's some mystery about what the 2 teens were really getting up to. They told their parents that they were just going to fish, but they told their friends that they were crossing to the Bahamas. Shortly after they left, a line of thunderstorms moved towards the area, and the boys were never heard from again. A massive search was conducted, but sadly, nothing was found. 1 year later, the pair's boat was found off the coast of Bermuda with a broken iPhone and some personal effects left inside. One of the most popular and bizarre theories trying to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery comes from Charles Berlitz. He insists that the area is home to the lost city of Atlantis. The missing ships and planes and malfunctioning equipment, according to him, were all caused by rays of energy let out by the special energy crystals that power Atlantis. While this sounds silly, Berlitz's theory was convincing enough that over 20 million people bought his book worldwide. Previously, the compass wouldn't work well in the Bermuda Triangle since the lines of the 2 poles coincided here, true north and magnetic north. But if you fall into this line, your compass will behave strangely. But the magnetic north is constantly shifting, and now it's far beyond the triangle. No legend says pirates of the last centuries operate in the Bermuda Triangle, or that the Flying Dutchman makes other ships disappear. A popular theory is that ships travel to the distant past or future through a time portal in the Bermuda Triangle. Fortunately, these are all myths. Just imagine hundreds of giant tentacles reaching out to a group of ships sailing through the Bermuda Triangle. In the past centuries, they could easily sink an entire fleet, since the ships were made of wood and were lighter. Squids wrapped decks with their strong tentacles, made holes in the ship's hulls with their sharp beaks. Toothy suction cups could break the masts and tear the sails. The water was filling the holds and slowly rising to the deck. The ship sank in a matter of minutes. Survivors reached the shore and told everyone about huge monsters. This is how the legends of the Kraken appeared. Fortunately, now people have sonars and equipment for monitoring the sea space. They say the main reason why this place is so enigmatic must be the magnetic fields that form this ominous triangle. Ocean floor is made of rocks containing a lot of magnetite. It's more like iron. Magnetic fields react to the high concentration of magnetite on the ocean floor, which may start a sort of conflict between the two. It can often lead to various weather anomalies and, as a result, navigation issues. And naturally, any changes in the ocean floor or the Earth's magnetic fields influence the Bermuda Triangle a lot. Magnetic fields tend to shift their position, so do tectonic plates and even the continents, even though we never notice it. The skies are usually very clear there, but back in 1883, some people witnessed abnormal things in the area. Some claim to have seen large blocks of ice falling from the skies, and the crew even managed to save one as hard proof. Seems like the Bermuda Triangle has an alternate not only on Earth, but even in space. Spacecraft usually don't disappear into thin air though, like there's no air. This anomalous area is really large and stretches right above the South Atlantic. It occupies the area from Chile to Zimbabwe and sits right at the point where Van Allen radiation belts are the closest to the surface of our planet. The Earth has two such belts, which come in handy trapping the particles that shoot in from the Sun. They do a great job protecting the Earth from radiation. The magnetic field there is lower, so it allows the Earth's radiation belt to come closer to the surface. Whenever a satellite passes by, it will be exposed to radiation, which might lead to serious damage. So, no satellite can take pictures of it. The South Atlantic anomaly is part of the Earth where natural radiation just flows out of control. Still, there is little evidence that all these triangles are really dangerous. Many believe the Bermuda Triangle itself has been proven time and again to be nothing but a work of fiction. In fact, some shipwrecks, such as the Ellen Austin, gained popularity in the middle of the 20th century, while nobody even thought of drawing a triangle in the Bermuda area before that. The mystery was popularized by science fiction writers and became a common myth, while no serious research proved it any more dangerous than other parts of the world's ocean. So, the crew of the Ellen Austin back in 1881 weren't even aware of the Bermuda Triangle back then, let alone afraid of it. What do you think? Boom! This word isn't nearly enough to illustrate the explosion, the most powerful one you've ever seen. And what's most important, it's a lake that's just blown up. Hey, all you wanted to do is light up some fireworks in this picturesque place. But you must have totally missed the danger strictly no fire warning sign along the way. And now, the wall of fuming water is quickly closing in on you. But first, let's rewind to the beginning of the whole thing. You're in Alberta, Canada, and have just arrived to Abraham Lake for a hike of your life. The lake is frozen, and the view is awesome. Those bubbles under the ice look like hundreds of frozen jellyfish. In reality, they're made of methane, a toxic and highly flammable gas produced by bacteria living on the bottom of the lake. That's why the sign is there. If you so much as light a match on this ice, it might set the whole thing on fire. Luckily, you've taken note of it on the way here and put away the fireworks you wanted to light up. Another place, another time. Another lake. This one's not frozen. In fact, it probably hasn't seen a winter since the last ice age. We're in Cameroon now, and the place is called Lake Nyos. It looks peaceful, but make no mistake, its orange-brown waters hide a deadly secret. The lake rests atop a highly volatile area, and the fissures in its bottom let out massive amounts of carbon dioxide. When the ground shifts, this gas spills out of the lake and flows miles around it. The concentrations are so high that one breath of it would make you faint, and you'd have zero chance of waking up. You get the picture. But the most sinister thing about it is that the CO2 doesn't have a smell or color, so you wouldn't even see it coming. Local authorities have set up a system of pipes that drains the gas from the lake, making it relatively safe for people and animals in the vicinity. And another toxic lake, Kivu, on the border of Congo and Rwanda, has even been made to provide energy for millions of people thanks to its gases. While we're in Africa, the Danakil Depression in Ethiopia is also worth a blood-curdling visit. Dubbed the hottest place on Earth, it sure lives up to its name. The ravine is peppered with extremely hot springs, toxic acid ponds, and active volcanoes. The landscape is surreal, to say the least, and is probably the only inhabited place on Earth where no life can exist. The Afar people live here all year round and gather salt around the springs for trade, while scientists couldn't find any evidence of microbial life in those. Humans are notorious for settling in places most would gladly avoid. Take Mount Tambora in Indonesia. Thousands of people have been living on and around its slopes for centuries until the fateful day in 1815. Tambora is a volcano, and that year it decided to erupt, resulting in a blast that obliterated everything on the island and was heard almost 1,000 miles away. It spewed out so much volcanic ash that it fell in sheets on the surrounding isles and caused a year without a summer in the whole northern hemisphere. It was the most powerful eruption in the last 10,000 years, and Mount Tambora became as much as 5,000 feet lower after it. But back to our time. There's an island you won't be allowed to visit, but I bet you wouldn't want to anyway. The Snake Island in Brazil is home to thousands of snakes, as its name implies. The moment you step on its soil, you're in grave danger of being bitten by a viper. The island is also the only place you can meet a golden lancehead viper, the encounter of a lifetime, literally. This place is so dangerous that Brazil has banned tourists and any other visitors from it unconditionally. Okay, gotta go. Now, get your warmest clothes on and don't forget a fur face mask. We're going to Omayak in Russia. It's a small town in the far north that's often called the coldest place on the planet where people still live. The only place with a lower average temperature is Antarctica, and that's saying something. In the winter, if you so much as forget to put on a sweater, and a fur coat, you'll get frozen to the bone in mere seconds. Temperatures here drop to the chilling minus 96 degrees Fahrenheit. Fresh fruit turns to chunks of ice in minutes and becomes so hard you could drive nails into wood with an apple here. Now, before you freeze in place, let's go somewhere no boat will take you. The Skeleton Coast in Namibia. No, really, you can only drive or fly in here because boats and ships won't go near the place. The waters are treacherous, sudden gales toss vessels around, and sharp rocks hiding underwater are all too happy to ram into their hulls. The coast itself stretches for hundreds of miles and is divided into southern and northern parts. Visitors on all-terrain vehicles are allowed freely into the southern part, but only about 800 people a year can get to the northern one, and only with guided tours. People are known to have been lost in this desert forever, and it's a daunting place to go. It got its name from numerous animal carcasses found here. Still, about 50,000 indigenous people managed to survive in this place, along with adapted animals, lizards, hyenas, and even elephants. Now, you'd expect a living destruction machine anywhere but the heart of Europe. Naples, one of the most famous cities in Italy, is built on top of an active supervolcano. In 2018, scientists noticed this monster of a mountain was building up magma in its depths. They say it isn't likely to erupt in the near future, but there's a smaller yet no less dangerous volcano just a few miles off, the infamous Vesuvius. You might remember it for the immolation of the Roman city of Pompeii about 2,000 years ago. You might, but I wasn't around then. This one has been active for a long while, and both citizens and guests of Naples put their lives at stake every single day they spend in town. But hey, while you're there, try the pizza. Northeast of France is also an unwelcoming place. A chain of areas has been dubbed Zone Rouge, or Red Zone, and declared off-limits since the 1920s. If, by some wild chance, you find yourself in one of these places, you'll only see wilted plants and scorched earth, so much in contrast with the lush landscapes of the rest of the country. The soil and air is so polluted here that people are prohibited to enter for fear of choking. And in any case, nothing can live in the red zone at the time. There's an inhabited island in Japan that was once closed for air travel for 8 years. Miyakijima is basically a volcano on whose slopes people live. It has been erupting roughly every 20 years, and the latest eruption was in 2000. The volcano doesn't normally spill lava, but instead it throws out enormous clouds of toxic sulfuric gases. Hey, don't forget your mask. Speaking of which, at the peak of its activity, residents of the island had to wear gas masks at all times, and even years after the eruption, they took those masks with them just in case. Hey, I can relate. Not far from where we've just been, in Kamchatka region of Russia, there's an incredibly beautiful valley in which you don't want to stay for too long. It's ominously called the Valley of Death, and it sits at the base of another active volcano. When the mountain lets out its fumes, spoiler, quite often, the toxic gases, heavier than air, go down its slopes and right into the valley. Small critters have no chance of survival breathing this stuff, and even larger animals and humans will have trouble getting out unscathed. Another deadly vacation destination is Saltstraumen Strait in Norway. It looks serene and beautiful, and you can almost feel it inviting you to take a dip and bathe in its waters. Don't do that though. Every 6 hours, the calm strait turns into a roaring mass dotted with huge and powerful whirlpools. It's all because of a tidal current between two fjords the strait is connecting. Here, on a high tide, the rush of water is too massive for the narrow stream, making it a deadly trap for both swimmers and boats. Now, over in Bolivia, there's a 45 miles long road that only the bravest dare to traverse. Yungas Road goes along the side of a mountain range and is a major attraction for cyclists craving for a thrill. A new passage has been built that bypasses the most dangerous parts of the route, but the original road was very narrow, with the abyss and no guardrails to speak of on one side and a steep slope on the other. Frequent landslides, fog, and rains made cycling here extremely dangerous and unpredictable, which, of course, never stopped adrenaline seekers from all over the world to come here for a bike ride like no other. Finally, if you like hot springs, you might also love a visit to Boiling Lake in Dominica. Located in a national park, it's a cavity filled with constantly boiling water from the rivers in the vicinity. It's kept hot by the extremely hot springs of toxic gas, and the fumes above the surface are also toxic. The lake attracts tourists, but getting too close to it might prove really dangerous. It's known to burst, flooding the surrounding area with clouds of gas.
Going to the beach in winter seems like a good plan. You can have a bonfire, build a sandcastle, search for shells, or swim in the ocean. The vibe might make you overlook the dangers ahead of you. Do you really think through the potential risks of paying a visit to the beach in the winter? The number one risk is waves. You might think it's okay to admire the view on the beach a few steps back from the ocean. Now let me introduce you to sneakers. Not the chocolate bar, sneaker, or with another name, sleeper waves. These are oversized coastal waves. They catch people off guard because they occur without warning or trace. These waves are particularly seen in Oregon, United States. People have been injured and at least 17 people have been swept up into the ocean since 2000. It got more media attention in 2011 when a memorial statue was built honoring the two teens faced with sneaker waves in Oregon. So, how come these waves are so dangerous? It's about their nature. They come out of the blue. With big waves, you see them coming or growing big. Plus, they form in the ocean and come towards the beach. These waves appear near the shore. It leaves less time for you to run to a safer spot. Okay, most of the time, they're not huge, as would be seen in apocalyptic movies. Yet, you can never know what nature holds. Maybe you remember this example from Mavericks. In 2010, a crowd was watching the surfing competition. Suddenly, Two large waves struck the people on the beach. It broke the seawall and injured more than 10 people. Sneaker waves don't look particularly larger than other waves until they break and quickly reach the beach. They form in a period of 10 to 20 minutes in between soft and regular-sized waves. They can surge more than 150 feet beyond the foam line. Then they reach the land with high power. Plus, they carry lots of sand and gravel with them. Sleeper waves are more commonly seen along steep coastlines compared to beaches with wider and softly sloped areas. People named these waves, not scientists. They observed what waves do. They washed up in a sneaky way. I mean, scientists didn't classify this phenomenon as a distinct sort of wave like they did with tsunamis or rogue waves. There's little scientific research made about them. Researchers say that sneaker waves form in offshore storms. These storms transfer the wind energy to the water surface. The waves carry this energy and then arrive at the beach during times of calm weather. The larger amount of energy they obtain compared to the regular waves that preceded them causes them to go higher up the coast. Imagine you go for a walk on the beach with your dog. The waves gently reach the beach. You play the throw and catch game. You don't know about sneaky waves, so you turn into an unwary beachgoer. What's the risk? Being washed into the water trapped against rocks. Since it's winter, you tend to wear heavier clothes. The sand that sneaker waves carry can quickly fill clothing and shoes, and that weighs you down. How can people enjoy the beach safely? First off, keep your distance if you're on the beach for storm watching, for instance. It might be mesmerizing to see how waves roll in over miles of ocean. The storms hit the shore, and you look at those extreme turbulent swells transform into strong 30-foot-long waves. Finding a higher spot that sees the ocean and waves might be best. Be the eagle, not the crab. Did Confucius say that? The second tip is if you're determined to storm watch, never turn your back to the ocean. Yes, eyes on the water. Lastly, be mindful of which part of the beach you're walking on. Stay away from the logs because they hold water. The water increases their weight. In the worst-case scenario, the ocean is powerful enough to roll the logs onto you. Let's assume you're hiking near the ocean. Use the designated trails because park authorities determine them as the safest roads possible. Going off-route can sound charming, but it can be dangerous for you and harmful to the ecosystem in the surrounding area. Now that you know where to walk, you can keep your eyes open about the geological stuff. Like the rocks can be slippery, erosion can rip them off. Yeah, it's better to avoid walking near bases of cliffs and bluffs. You'll never know when a natural phenomenon will occur. It might sound a little extreme, but you may want to check the tsunami evacuation routes of the area you're visiting. Tsunamis are hard to predict, but tides aren't. Tide tables are available online. This natural phenomenon looks harmless, yet it can isolate rocks from headlands and the shore. You probably don't want to find yourself with soaked wet clothes in the ocean for no reason. Climbing up onto the logs might not be the best idea either. Sure, they look heavy and sturdy when you're climbing, but even the smallest wave can take you like a leaf flying in the air. Not just logs, but also jetties are tricky. Sudden waves can make you lose your balance, and you can collapse. Let's return to the scenario where you and your dog are walking on the beach. This time your pet sees shorebirds and chases them. Birds could be there for foraging or roosting. Your dog could interrupt their chill zone. They can lose their energy reserves. Can you bump into creatures hiding under the sand? Some sorts of creatures can be dangerous for you. Better not to poke someone's home. Take a look at this one. It's a horseshoe crab. This one looks scary, yeah, but it's safe as long as you don't step on its spines. So it depends on the type of creature you see, but generally, it's okay to explore the sand with caution. Until now, we look at scenarios where you were on the beach when they caught up to sneaker waves. You could be in the water too. You could be surfing, just like the contestant in the Maverick surf competition, or swimming, if swimming is the new case. Consider these. The temperature is lower. The waves are crazier.
And there are probably no lifeguards there watching you in the winter. Swimming with friends is a safe option. Bonus, it's more fun. You should choose your swimming location carefully. Are there dangerous rocky areas? Can you easily go out if there's some sort of emergency? Know your spot. For that, you should check the weather too. Planning has a key role in winter water safety. A quick weather forecast and sea conditions check would do. You can consider buying a tow float if you're an adventurous open water swimmer. It's a flotation device designed to increase the swimmer's visibility in the water. They are lightweight and have fluorescent colors. Alternatively, you can wear a brightly colored swimming cap. We can talk more about the gear. Wearing a wetsuit is wise, as well as wetsuit gloves and boots. You can put your phone in a waterproof pouch or bag. Staying warm is essential in the winter. Don't just jump into the water at once. This can result in cold water shock. It's vital to enter the water slowly. In that way, your body can get used to the temperature. Once you take all the necessary precautions, you can enjoy the beach and explore its offers. What sort of gems can you find on the beach? A mermaid's purse? Maybe. No, it's not the purse of Ariel from Disney's Little Mermaid. That's actually an egg case belonging to sharks and rays. It's made out of keratin, kinda similar to your hair and fingernails. These purses are the place where the embryo grows. The egg hatches and the cases are carried away with the water to the beach. If you want to find one, you can look at the area near the seaweed. Have fun while searching for it! Now, I'm ending this video with a quick joke that's suitable for the cold weather of winter. What did the ocean say to the beach? Nothing. It just waved.
Ah, beautiful. You're walking with your friend and look up at the sky. The sun looks a bit different today. Like it has some kind of ring around it. A rainbow type thing. Huh. Look at that. Your friend pulls his head up out of his phone. You shouldn't look directly at the... Stop everything, he says. It's a sun halo. We need to find shelter now, unless you have the world's biggest umbrella on you. A sun halo is nature's sign that there's a snow or rainstorm on its way. It's caused by clouds that are made of bazillions of small ice crystals. Sunlight goes through those crystals, which causes the light to split and refract, like when there's a rainbow. Now, don't look at the sun halo directly. It's going to be tempting because it's not something you see every day. Plus, it's really beautiful. But ultraviolet light can burn the exposed tissue of your retina and cause serious damage, so it's not worth it. Grab some sunglasses and you're good to go. This phenomenon lasts around 40 minutes. These clouds are the same ones that can cause a spooky ring around the moon at night sometimes. In June 2020, what the people were looking at was an anvil cloud, a rare storm formation in the sky. Formed when strong air currents carry water vapor upwards, the air expands and spreads out as it hits the bottom of the stratosphere. It pushes the dense cloud into the cool anvil shape you see, and sometimes it even gets to be a mushroom. Anvil clouds produce some of the most dangerous lightning of all storms, one that's called a bolt out of the blue. This lightning strike seems to magically come out of the blue sky, with the storm being many miles away. This type of bolt comes from the top of the anvil and can be 10 times more powerful than a typical lightning strike. People got so frightened after witnessing a giant cloud that they thought something terrible must have happened. The locals had pictures of the large billow on social media before officials could explain what was going on. Authorities managed to calm everyone's fears by informing them it was nothing more than a natural phenomenon, and a beautiful one at that. Before dissipating, these clouds typically stay in one area, regardless of how strong the wind is. If you look off the western coast of France, you'll see the Isle of Ré. Thanks to its beautiful blue waters, clean sandy beaches, and stunning lighthouses, this place is a very popular vacation spot. But perhaps the coolest part about the island of Ré is what you see just beyond the shore: square waves. This strange wave pattern looks like a giant chessboard over the ocean. Many visitors to the island become captivated by these waves and go to high up places like nearby lighthouses to take pictures of this natural phenomenon. They say that when looking down at these square patterns in the water, it's almost as if there's some sort of metal grid underneath it. And while these wave patterns are truly fascinating, the people who choose to enjoy them from afar are doing it right. They know to stay out of the water. To understand how these square waves come to be, it's important to know how waves occur in the first place. Generally, waves can travel many miles over the surface of the water, depending on local winds and weather. And even on days when the weather seems somewhat calm, storms located elsewhere can send in crashing waves that affect the surrounding calm waters. When waves travel onto the shores of distant lands, they're called swells. This is different from a wave that occurs from local wind. When two different swells coming from opposite directions meet, it's known as a cross sea. This is what generates these square waves you see near the Isle of Ré. While these waves are one of the reasons why people flock to this island, they can still expect to enjoy calm, relaxing waters most of the time. The cross sea only occurs during certain times of the year in specific weather. Plus, it's common knowledge around Ré to steer clear of the ocean when these square waves appear. So it's not often that you hear about anyone getting caught in them, because most people know better. And since a lot of people on the island are tourists, there are plenty of signs around warning them to get out of the water during this time. However, not everyone gets the memo. There have been a handful of cases where people got caught in the cross sea, but thankfully and luckily, they managed to get out safely. These square waves have become somewhat famous over time, given that there's really no other place in the world that boasts a cross sea like this one. In fact, no one has ever spotted square waves anywhere but the island of Ré. However, there are swells that can be found throughout the oceans in the world, and a cross sea can take place. But if the angle they approach each other at is more shallow, the wave may actually look like it's coming from the same direction, even when it's not. Not to mention, swells can slowly lose momentum as they drift further and further away, so their crest, or the top of the wave, appears more round and less jagged. The island of Ré's specific wind and weather patterns are literally the perfect storm and create a cross sea that people can clearly recognize. It's 2009 in Italy. A man was hanging out in his kitchen. Then he saw some flickering lights. He knew just what to do. He moved his family to a safe place. A couple of seconds later, a massive earthquake hit the whole region. His family survived thanks to his quick reaction. He knew these flickering lights were actually a sign of an upcoming earthquake. People have been seeing these mysterious lights for ages. Some thought it was some kind of sign coming from space. Scientists never used to take them seriously, but after the invention of photography, more and more evidence of these strange lights appeared. Soon, they realized the connection. The lights appear, and pretty soon, the earthquake hits. After a bit of digging around, they actually found some records of these earthquake lights from hundreds of years ago. There were bluish flames coming out of the ground right before an earthquake. Oh, creepy. The Christmas Island crab is part of an amazing phenomenon once a year. Their migration period is determined by the phase of the moon and the first rainfall between October and February, although the precise date can't be predicted. Once the crabs have been prompted, they leave their homes amongst the forest and migrate in massive hordes towards the sea. Numbering in millions, a sea of red crabs is observed as they make their journey across the island, creating roadblocks and making their way to the ocean. There, they lay their eggs and then make their trek back, returning to the forest until the next year. There are bridges in the Indian state of Meghalaya that are created entirely of living tree roots. The bridges are made up of tangled, thick roots that are strong enough to hold over 50 people at a time. The Khasi and Jaintia tribes became masters in the art of growing these insane bridges. They need them to cross the streams below with ease. Some of these root bridges are over 180 years old. To make them, the members of the tribes care for the roots until they grow long enough to reach the opposite bank. It can take as long as 10 to 15 years to grow a bridge. In the process, the roots become tightly entwined with one another. This is how the bridges get so strong. And once a bridge is fully grown, it can last for over 500 years. While some roots decay, new ones are continually growing. That's why the unusual natural constructions last so long. Light pillars are colorful beams of light that either jet up from Earth towards the sky or shine down from the clouds. Usually, they only occur in cold temperatures, as they form when the sunlight gets reflected off ice crystals floating in the air. The higher the crystals are in the air, the taller these bright and colorful pillars become. They're most common at sunrise and sunset. There are hidden caves all over the world that are filled with glowing light. This light comes from hundreds of glowworms that have made a cozy home in the caves. Some of the caves are more than 30 million years old, and most of them can be found in New Zealand and Australia. The worms themselves don't actually glow, but baby worms, called larvae, form silk strings made out of mucus. These strings form nets. It's these nets that can illuminate the entire cave. Their purpose is to attract flies and other tasty insects for the glowworms to munch on. Rainbow trees are 100% a real thing. Hailing from the Philippines and Indonesia, these colorful wonders are called rainbow eucalyptus, or rainbow gum. The rainbow hues are created by the contrast in colors of old and new bark. As the thin surface layers of bark peel away, they reveal newer ones with brighter, more eye-catching colors. The brand new bark is green. Then it changes to purple, then red, and finally brown. This is because the trees contain a substance called chlorophyll. It makes the bark green. As each strip of bark ages, it loses chlorophyll and slowly changes its color.
Ah, a purple sunset. You must have seen one of those at least once in your life. Normally, it's nothing ominous and has to do with the way light travels. The light that the sun produces is white. When it goes through a prism, you see light waves of different colors, from red and orange to blue, green, and indigo. Light normally travels in a straight line if there's no obstacle in its way. The shorter light waves, including blues and purples, are scattered easier when they meet with those obstacles, like molecules and aerosols in the atmosphere. Because the sun is low on the horizon at sunset and sunrise, its light has to pass through more molecules that scatter the violet and blue light. The colors that your eyes pick up, then, are yellow, orange, and red. But with the right conditions, you can see the gorgeous purple sky. Sometimes purple sky appears for much scarier reasons. It can be caused by hurricanes, wildfires, or dust storms. The concentration of vapor in the air increases, and the light scatters more than usual. Dust, a setting sun, and low cloud cover all contribute to this natural show, too. The sky turns orange and red at dusk if there's still enough light. Then it gives off pink hues, which mix up with a dark blue sky above. Now, do you remember what happens when you mix pink and blue? You get the color purple. Not every hurricane makes the sky turn purple, and trying to predict if it's going to happen is like trying to forecast a rainbow. Still, people reported several major hurricanes made the skies turn purple. Now, green skies might look just as spectacular as purple ones, but they actually also scream danger. They're usually there to tell you a thunderstorm, hailstorm, or a tornado is somewhere nearby. The unique color is a result of yellow sun rays getting mixed with the blue light coming from storm clouds. So you're enjoying a nice day by the ocean with a fresh breeze in your hair, when suddenly you notice the water starts retreating from the beach at a huge speed. This is a sign for you to start running as fast and far away from the beach as you can. This most likely means that a tsunami is on the way. A quick reaction maximizes your chances of survival. Now, if you notice the sea level is rising, but it doesn't seem too extreme, it could be another sign of an approaching tsunami. It happens in 40% of cases, and the incoming water is the first tsunami wave. The next one, way larger and more dangerous, usually follows in about 10 minutes. Another thing about tsunamis is that they like to arrive with some loud sounds. People describe them as thunder, the sound of a locomotive, a helicopter, or just a loud boom. Do you see a channel of choppy water on the beach? It's in your best interest to stay away from the water. There might be a rip current under the surface that can be extremely dangerous. Sometimes waves hit the shore in a weird way, which forms these rip currents. You might see a strange break in the waves, or an area with a different color than the rest of the water. Random bits of seaweed going in all directions is another rip current warning sign. If you happen to find yourself caught in a rip current, try to stay afloat, but don't try to go against the current. You'll only waste precious energy. Scream for help and try to float your way along the beach. Once you break out of the current, swim diagonally to the shore. The next time you spot conically shaped clouds in the sky, remember it's a good time to start looking for some shelter. If it just stays like that, a severe storm is on the way. But if a cloud of that shape starts spinning around, it means it's about to transform into a tornado. If you have bees nearby, they can save you from big trouble one day. These hard-working little guys get more active than usual when they feel like a storm is on the way. They speed up to collect more nectar before it hits them, and once they're done with it, they'll always come back to the hive 10 to 15 minutes before heavy rain, even when there are no obvious signs of it coming. Their secret is super sensitive hairs on the back that can pick up electrostatic buildups from storm clouds. For centuries, people have noticed that animals act weirdly a couple of days before big seismic events. Dogs can't stop barking, cows halt their milk, and toads, rats, and snakes leave their homes. It looks like animals can feel smaller initial shock waves that humans don't even notice. Scientists have tried to find some legit explanation for it and run endless tests and experiments. But so far, they're still on their way to explaining this mystery. Can you smell ozone in the air? When a thunderstorm is on the way, it's the most distinct and pungent smell you can pick up. An electrical charge of lightning sets it free from higher altitudes. The other, more pleasant smell of rain is petrichor. Rainwater wakes up molecules on plants, trees, concrete, and asphalt. Their aroma spreads all over the place. You can even feel that smell in your own mouth. All those positive ions in the air that a lightning bolt sets free gets mixed with ozone and your saliva, and that's how you get that bitter metallic taste. When lightning is about to strike, you might hear bizarre crackling, buzzing, or vibrating sounds coming from metal objects nearby. Your palms may begin to sweat, and then you can feel your hair stand on end. That's a clear call for action, and that action is to run for your life. Positive charges are going through your body trying to reach toward the negatively charged part of the storm. Trust me, you don't want these charges to meet. If you see no shelter that you can reach fast, try to make yourself smaller than the objects around you. Drop down your umbrella and stay away from wire fences, metal pipes, rails, and other metallic objects. And don't lie flat on the ground, it's likely wet, which means it's a great conductor of electricity. If you suddenly notice crevices in the asphalt next to your house, it could be a sinkhole warning sign. Inspect your house on the inside. Does that door begin to jam? Or maybe there's a gap where the walls meet the ceiling. Uneven kitchen cabinets and drawers, slanted floors, stairs that begin to slope, water leaking after every rain, and displaced moldings are all signs that a sinkhole is about to open. To find out if it's definitely a sinkhole and how dangerous it is, you gotta consult with an engineering company. If you find a sinkhole that's already there, you gotta stay away from the sinkhole area. Fence or rope it off to make it less dangerous for others. You'll need professional help to fix it. Some volcanoes scream when they're about to erupt. Small earthquakes, which often happen before, produce a hum. It's mostly non-audible to human ears, but sometimes it reaches a frequency that lets you hear it as a strange rumbling or hissing sound coming from the ground. This noise is known as a harmonic tremor. With some volcanoes, it's the sound of magma bubbles vibrating when they're going through crevices in the crust of the earth. But it's not always like this. If scientists manage to understand what exactly causes these volcanic screams, they could create a limited early warning system for volcanic eruptions. If you're out in the wild, pay attention to the water in creeks, streams, and rivers. If its level is quickly falling, even if it's raining, this might be a sign of a nearing landslide. And if you hear a faint rumbling noise or unusual sounds, like boulders knocking together, it could mean debris is on its way to you. It's a sign to head to safety immediately, like right now.
Something interesting has recently happened in South Dakota. It was all over the internet, so perhaps you already know about it. In July of 2022, the sky in this state suddenly turned green. So, what happened there? Was it caused by a human or by nature? Let's find out. Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. Shortly after a heavy storm, the sky over South Dakota in the U.S. was still overcast. Locals finally went outside and saw that the sky had an intense dark green hue, and they'd never seen anything like that before. People said that it looked like something straight up from science fiction, or even a horror movie. Unsurprisingly, South Dakotans immediately started spreading the news all over social media. People shared their beautiful, yet very eerie pictures on Twitter. They showed the sky over the city of Sioux Falls and a few other towns. Even though it may look like something supernatural, in reality, this is not a terrifying phenomenon at all. It's a simple play of the light and the atmosphere. Something like this happens quite rarely, and usually means that really bad weather is approaching. And that's also true to what happened in South Dakota. Just before people started sharing photos, a thunderstorm swept through the town of Sioux Falls. This was confirmed by the U.S. Weather Service. This hurricane was terrible. The wind speed was about 100 miles per hour. According to the Beaufort scale on wind speeds, this is the fastest and most destructive storm. There are only 12 numbers on this scale, and the maximum wind strength starts at 73 miles per hour. But why isn't this all over the news then? Well, because it's kind of a usual thing for the residents. Thunderstorms occur very often in the United States, especially in the warmer months. And 1 out of 10 such thunderstorms can become something serious, like a tornado. This one wasn't an exception. It was the so-called Delco storm. Delco is very widespread and long-lived. It's actually a combination of a fast-moving group of severe thunderstorms and downpours. People often say that a Delco is as strong as a tornado. Still, there's a difference between them. A tornado is a vortex, a rotating column of air. It's usually about 500 feet in diameter, although sometimes its width can reach up to 2.5 miles. I don't envy those who would stumble upon that. But the main point is that they rotate. The wind moves very fast in a circle, near some invisible center. A Delco is a strong thunderstorm, or a system of strong thunderstorms with straight-line winds. In other words, it doesn't spin. Instead, the Delco chooses a point somewhere and simply runs to it, like a very motivated marathon runner. If we compare a Delco to an ordinary tornado, the latter has 6 levels of strength, from 40 to 380 miles per hour. So, a Delco is kind of like a small, average level 1 to 2 tornado. Usually, its speed is within the range of 73 to 113 miles per hour. And, in both cases, they can be accompanied by severe thunderstorms, lightning, and rain. But still, these are different things. A storm becomes a Delco if the damage trail left by it exceeds 240 miles, and if the wind speed is at least 58 miles per hour. It's quite difficult to predict. It can form even on a clear day when meteorologists don't even anticipate any storms. And then, the winds appear suddenly. It's so surprising that they may even feel explosive. But the National Weather Service tries to warn people at least half an hour or an hour before this happens, so that residents have time to prepare and hide. It wasn't any different this time. The storm swept through almost all of South Dakota, as well as the states of Minnesota and Iowa. The consequences were quite serious. More than 30,000 people were left without electricity. Fortunately, people were fine. That's because the locals are pretty used to Durecos. However, the green sky is something different. It became a very unusual sight for the locals. Everyone was wondering why it happened. Was it a bad sign or a normal weather phenomenon? Well, to be honest, scientists don't have an exact explanation. But although there are only assumptions, they sound pretty convincing. A green sky is a very rare phenomenon. Most scientists think that this happens when a powerful storm approaches the area before sunset or sunrise. Then the sky will turn green in this area. NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns, who once faced a similar event himself, suggests that the green sky appeared because of the huge hail before the storm. First, let's talk about why the sky looks blue, or any other shade, depending on its mood. In short, the sun simultaneously carries all the rays of the color spectrum. It may seem white to us in total, but it actually has all the colors at the same time. However, these color waves all have different lengths. For example, blue rays are shorter than the other ones. They jump away from the air molecules better than the red waves, so they reach us faster. Because of this, on a regular clear day, the sky seems blue. At the same time, red and orange color waves are very long and move slower, so they're usually left behind. But when the sun goes below the horizon or rises, the rays' directions change, and these waves reach us better. It all means that even if the sunrises and sunsets seem red and orange to us, in fact, there are still blue and green waves among them. But they have to bounce off something to reach us faster and become stronger than the red rays. Have you guessed what I'm getting at? This is where the water comes into play. Clouds are made up of water droplets. When they become large enough, but don't fall yet, for example, due to strong winds, they affect how the light behaves in the sky. Large, heavy storms mostly consist of water and hail, and water reflects blue and green rays best of all. That's exactly the reason why the water in rivers and lakes seems bluish-green to us, although in reality, it's transparent. And yeah, algae matter too. So, there are a couple of key factors why the sky may turn green. First off, the sun should be at the horizon level. Another factor is that while the storm clouds are approaching, they shouldn't cover the sky completely. There still must be a little room for the sun rays. Then, barely noticeable blue rays jump up to storm clouds. They're repelled by water droplets and hail. Mixing with the red sunset, they turn into a bright green light. And this green light is spreading all over the sky. That's why in most of these cases, when the sky turns green, people can only see it in the evenings. Yeah, it can also happen in the middle of the day. But since the conditions are already quite specific, seeing something like that during the day is even rarer. Still, if you see a green sky, you don't need to panic. It doesn't necessarily mean that a terrible storm is approaching. The chances are high though, but still, it's not a rule. It can be just heavy rain or a heavy hail. In other words, if you see a green sky, then you'd better hide, and hide your car. However, if you were lucky enough to see the stunning sky from the comfort of your own home, it's indeed very exciting. If you get a glimpse of something like that, just know that you had a chance to experience something very rare and special. Some people said it was the most incredible thing they had ever